So some housekeeping announcements first. There isn't anybody missing. I'm just seeing one more councillor arriving, key one. We're not expecting the fire alarms to go off. If it does, please leave everything and follow the exit signs on the Pease Hill side of the building and exit via the Pease Hill door and assemble in St Mary's Passage. Now, I do always say this now, but members of the public watching may see councillors using laptops and phones during the evening, and this has become, many of us, in fact most of us now use our laptops and phones to read and access the agenda, the information pack and speeches, and also, and it enables us to contribute to the meeting in an effective way. It is also part of our strategy to reduce paper and waste and move to net zero. I also want to say, for members, we have reflections in the Szeged room at 5:45. I would ask all of you, those of all faith, any faith and none, to please join us if you'd like to. I would also ask that you respect the reflections and not make a lot of noise outside the Szeged room. We move to agenda item 1, the approval of the minutes. Can I approve the minutes of the council meeting held on the 19th of October 2023, which can be found on pages 7 to 34 of your agenda? So I can take that as read. Do we vote on that? Mm-hmm. Okay, I can take that as read. Thank you. So the agenda is passed. The minutes are passed. So agenda item 2, we move on to that, to note the report of the returning officer result of the Queen Edith's by-election. On behalf of the councillors, may I welcome Councillor Blackburn-Hogan to this chamber. I hope you have a rewarding time during your period of office. So, agenda item 3. So, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillors Ashton, Divkovic and Healy. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Martinelli.
Apologies for lateness from Councillor Payne.
Okay. Thank you. So, Mayor's announcements. The Trevin service, one of the Cambridge City's 4 annual civic church services, will take place on Sunday, the 21st of January. This is down at, it is the 21st, not the 14th. The sermon will take place at the Church of the Good Shepherd, Arbury, at 10 a.m, and there will be refreshments after. So the Mayor's diary has, since, just a quick roundup, since our last meeting, been very full, pleasingly full, with charity events, charity AGMs and business partnering events, and giving talks about what the Mayor does. I've been to Veterans and Allied Remembrance services and memorial events at the American Cemetery, along with our own civic remembrance at the War Memorial and at Great St Mary's, where our Deputy Mayor attends. Many people from across our community are coming to see me in the parlour, which is very pleasing. And of course, December gets extremely full. Now, just an update, the 2 mayoral charities that I have, and in fact this is the case for all the mayoral charities over the years, they each have the use of the Guildhall for a fundraising or a similar event each year. So this, it'll be 2024, the Cambridge branch of Parkinson's UK, one of my charities, will be holding a series of concerts on the Sunday, the 28th of January. So they have a children's orchestra who are creating their own music. I think there are actually 4 concerts in total. And then the Cambridge Philharmonic Orchestra will be performing. Tickets will be available shortly. So watch out for information about this event. And I want to thank various people and the charity for organising this. And I hope you'll all support it. So we can now move on to declarations of interest. I would like members to declare now any interests in the items on the agenda before us this evening. Members are reminded that they can declare interests at any time during the meeting if anything occurs to them during the debates tonight. So do we have any declarations of interest?
Chair,
Councillor Bajan.
Chair, I'm a member of Cambridge Cycling Campaign.
Thank you, Councillor Bajan. Is there anybody else? Okay. Now, I always do say this, but I'll say it again. Could I ask all members to be concise with their contributions, with contributions they wish to make, and to show respect to their fellow members in all debates. During this meeting, I will ring the bell when the person speaking has half a minute left, and then again when the time has elapsed. So, we now move to agenda item 4, public questions. We will turn to public question time, which will run for 30 minutes maximum. Now, the other thing that's very important in this meeting, we have new public speaking rules which were agreed at the October full council meeting. These provide that members of the public must send in their text of their public question in advance of the meeting. The text of the question will no longer be read out as it is published in advance of the meeting. It's available in the information pack, and will also be shared on screen. Members of the public can introduce themselves and advise if they are speaking on behalf of a group. And personally, I would be very pleased if they do advise us of that. So the executive councillor or chair of the relevant committee, will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. And then members of the public have 2 minutes for a supplementary question or can comment on something that has been said. And the executive councillor or chair of committee has 2 minutes to respond. So, Mr. Clough, would you like to take a seat at the public speaking table, which is, have we? Oh, right, yes, you are there, thank you, yes. I've got the wrong glasses on, I think. Would you like to take a seat at the public speaking table, which you are, and introduce yourself and advise if you're speaking on behalf of a group? And yes, you have, yes, if you could do so, thank you.
My name is Hugh Clough. I'm a resident of Newnham, and I'm speaking in my own capacity and not on behalf of a group.
Can I ask the executive councillor to respond, and I'll remind you again that you have 2 minutes to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clough. I was on the planning committee that refused the application, and I attended some of the appeal proceedings. This matter is very important to me, along with any other applications that has a bearing on nature in and around Cambridge. I brought the motion of the biodiversity emergency to this council in May 2019, and I continue to seek, alongside all councillors in this chamber and on the planning committee and with our officers, to recognise what biodiversity we have in and around the city and how to protect and enhance it. We strive to do this across all areas of our services. I also know that the climate and biodiversity crises are worse than we imagined, and that legislation is not reflecting the reality, nor providing anywhere near the adequate action an adequate action plan. We seek ways within our ability as a district council to do more, and we aim to speak out more as well. But as I'm sure you know, planning legislation has a very constrained way of dealing with decision-making and planning appeals. Our refusal was based on our assessment of the evidence, and our reasons for refusal were carefully considered. The inspector then decided that those reasons were not sufficient. It may be small comfort, but the outcome of the Alston-Croft appeal was considered on its merits in relation to its landscape design and siting of the student buildings, and there were no wider issues of a precedent that have been set in terms of the council's approach to ecology or biodiversity, and I am assured that there are no wider implications in relation to the effectiveness of the council's policy. They will continue to have weight and be fully considered as part of planning approved proposals, although that does not mean we will not keep them under review as circumstances and legislation changes.
Thank you, Councillor Thornborough, and that was within the 2 minutes. Mr. Clough, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. This case has undermined public confidence in the Greater Cambridge Shared Planning Service. What measures are being taken to address the failings identified?
Can the Executive Councillor respond? Again, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
In the planning service, we take a lot of reviews about the way the committees work, the way the appeals respond to refusals of planning appeals, and we look at those very carefully so that we can learn from, as much as possible, the implications of the committee decision followed by the appeal decision. We would like the situation where that there were no appeals going forward and that the committee decisions were the ones that are upheld. In this case, we are doing a review of that appeal, and I will be learning some lessons in the new year when I speak to the case officer in detail about this. We already have a review of the pre-application process. We've revised that, and we are going to be considering how the planning committee can be involved in the pre-application process much earlier, so that, if, for example, when the principal decisions of a site are established, the committee will be able to be presented with those parameters and be able to have a view, speak about the views of those parameters. I hope that that sort of process will improve how we work with applicants, how we consider policy, so that we work for the best for the residents and for the places in the city. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to the next public speaker, Wendy Blythe, who I'm advised is participating virtually on Teams. Would you like to introduce yourself and advise if you're speaking on behalf of a group? Over to you, Wendy.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Wendy Blythe, and I'm chair of the Federation of Cambridge Residents Associations. So I'll be speaking on behalf of FECRA. Thank you.
May I ask the Executive Councillor Carling, is it, to respond? And please may I remind you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for raising this, Ms Blythe. The City Council's tree strategy falls under my portfolio, so I'm going to respond to your question. There are several different legal protections which require tree owners to engage with the designated regulator prior to undertaking tree works in specific circumstances. Specific trees of high amenity value can be made the subject of a tree preservation order, where a tree is protected by TPO, and application for consent must be made to the local planning authority where any work is proposed on it. The local planning authority may issue a consent with conditions, or refuse consent. And that decision is based on the impact the proposed work will have on the tree's amenity with regard to the reasons put forward to support the work. There are, of course, issues around that system, as members of the Planning Committee have to indirectly consider financial implications as part of their decision, which really is not what we want the Planning Committee to be focused on. And that is the whole reason that the now abolished Article 5 of the Town and Country Planning Act used to absolve local authorities of financial liability for decisions like this one. We are calling on the government to reinstate the provisions of that article to allow us to make these decisions without the threat of financial penalties for the council hanging over us. And I'm raising that more broadly with the Local Government Association because it's a national issue. All trees in conservation areas over 75 millimetres in diameter at breast height are protected. The LPA should be notified of any proposed work, and it can either not object to the proposal or serve a tree protection order to prevent the work from going ahead. A landowner may fell up to 5 cubic metres in any calendar quarter on their property without a felling licence, as long as no more than 2 cubic metres are sold. Landowners do have to apply to the Forestry Commission for a felling licence, though, if they plan to fell more than that amount. All the above regulatory mechanisms have exceptions to the general requirements that cover, for example, but are not limited to, dead and dangerous trees. And the LPA has to consider the protection of on-site trees with regard to local plant policy and national planning policy, and it may issue or it may refuse a planning application or issue consent subject to conditions that protect existing trees. Tree preservation orders may also be issued for long-term protection beyond that imposed by planning condition.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question? Ms. Blythe?
I do, yes, please. Fine. Can you hear me? Yeah. The Times reported this month on a 123-year-old London plane tree in Stroud Green that had been the centre of a long legal dispute with the insurers Alliance and Aviva, who were blaming the tree for causing subsidence and calling on Haringey Council to cut it down. The Times reported that this case highlights the dilemma facing councils up and down the country. It is wrong that councils are having to make the choice between saving a tree and paying huge sums of taxpayers' money or felling a tree. Has the council assessed what impact Cambridge's water shortage and groundwater issues and the plans for building 250,000 houses is likely to have on Cambridge's stock of existing mature trees?
Right, can the Executive Councillor respond, please? And again, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for that. I'm not familiar with the specific case you mentioned there, but I can only really agree with you that this is a huge national issue and councils absolutely shouldn't be being put in this position. And I'm very grateful, actually, that we've been able to work in a very cross-party way on this around the council, especially in relation to what's been going on the Planning Committee. I'm not especially familiar with the response to your question on the water issue, but I will happily provide a written answer to that shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we now move on to the third public speaker, Martin Tom. Would you like to introduce yourself and advise if you're speaking on behalf of the group?
Hello, my name is Martin Tom, and I'm speaking in an individual capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. May I ask the Executive Councillor to respond? And again, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Does that seem very loud? I agree wholeheartedly that repair cafes are an excellent way of not just preserving the Earth's resources, but also supporting residents to maintain valuable possessions, perhaps valuable, as you mentioned, in the times of the cost of living crisis, but also I know that things can be fixed in repair cafes that have sentimental value, so there's a lot of good. They also fit in with one of our objectives in our climate change strategy to reduce consumption of resources, reduce waste, and increase recycling in Cambridge. And so we have taken a range of actions to increase their use. We've supported repair cafes mostly through the Cambridge carbon footprint, but also independently through this year we funded 4 repair cafes in Trumpington Repair Cafe Group. We've funded these through our Sustainable City grants, and just by chance I got the list today of the people that have applied for the next round, and surprisingly there's not a single request for specific funding for repair cafes. So I would be happy to hear from you regarding when you said they've asked for more funding. That would be the way that we would be able to support the funding. And although the grant funding round has now closed for the year, it's possible that we'll have some money left over. So if you'd like to contact me or any other groups that want to run a repair cafe, then do let me know and I'll see what I can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Mr. Tom, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that answer. I wanted to ask more specifically whether the City Council might back the idea of creating a Cambridge Green directory in both electronic and paper form, which would list on a citywide basis every concrete manifestation of the circular economy, of which repair cafes are a crucial part. It strikes me that a green directory like this would be something the city could take pride in, and given the huge number of tourists and others who visit Cambridge each year, simply by producing such a directory, they would be making a further important step in tackling the global climate emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Can Councillor Moore, the Executive Council, respond, please?
Thank
2
you.
minutes.
And sorry, in my first answer, you also asked about promotion, and I forgot to say that we do promote repair cafes, but we're more than happy if anyone's running one and they'd like us to promote that, if they contact us. And you mentioned the International Repair Cafe Day, and we've already added that, so we missed it this year, but now that we know, we'll be we're happy to promote it in future. I think the idea for a green directory is an excellent idea. Cambridge Carbon Footprint have started something, the carbon directory map of Cambridge, and I know that the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority are looking into having a holistic, for the whole combined authority area, sort of portal, website around anything to reduce carbon emissions. So I will double check, because we don't want to, the point of that is to have a one-stop shop, but I'll certainly look into that and take that forward. Thank you. And as I say, please do contact me about the repair cafes. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And thank you, Mr. Tom. So we now move on to the fourth public speaker, Phil Rogers. Would you like to introduce yourself and advise if you're speaking on behalf of a group?
Thank you. Good evening. Yes, my name is Phil Rogers, and I'm one of the founders of the Cambridgeshire Unitaries campaign, which is seeking to introduce unitary authorities for Cambridgeshire. And we have about 150 members now, so question number 4, please.
Excuse me, my microphone's going a little strange then. May I ask the Executive Council to respond? Councillor Davey, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Phil. And can I take the opportunity to thank you for all you do to support local democracy within our city? Much appreciated. As you say, the question is only a few weeks since we had our last council, and so as you can imagine, little formal has been undertaken to date. This has been compounded by the paternity leave of our chief executive, and I'm delighted to be able to say he's had a baby daughter called Ada Rose. We'll circulate that more broadly. Although there's been little limited formal discussion, as you can probably guess, there has been quite significant informal debates and discussions, because the question, as posed by the first proposal from Councillor Bick, has generated quite a lot of discussion. So I've been in touch with a range of bodies to sound them out, to see what they are, and it'd be fair to say there's quite a few people in favour, but there's also 1 or 2 people who have quite a few questions. It would be fair to say there are a number of key themes starting to emerge, though, even in these informal chats. The first is around geography. How far from the centre of Cambridge should a unitary authority for this city be? Should it include Southcams in total, or should it just be around the economic and work areas in relation to this city? That's the first. The second is around affordability, which is an interesting place to go. How many people do you require in a unitary authority to manage adult social care without going bankrupt? Which is a significant and important discussion to have. There are investigations clearly that it's around 400,000 people, and that therefore takes you into place. And given Nottingham's situation at the moment, clearly we have to be wary. The third one is around governance. Is it a unitary authority, or is it a unitary authority within an overall mayoral area? And that's the second thing. So whilst there's been little to report formally, I can assure you we will keep you abreast of how things go forward, and I hope to have some formal announcements in the next couple of minutes. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Rogers?
Well, just very briefly to say thank you very much for that answer. It's particularly interesting to hear that we may have some further news in the coming weeks, and obviously I'll be following that with great interest. And I just wanted to say, if anybody else is interested in getting more involved in this discussion, please have a look at our website at camsunitaries.org.uk and get in touch with us through there. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Davey, would you like to respond? And you have 2 minutes again.
I don't think it's usually our policy to endorse advertising, but on this occasion, I would encourage people to go onto the website that Phil referred to. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, and thank you to all our public speakers for coming in or being online. It is an important part of democracy. So that now concludes our public question time. We now turn to item 5, recommendations of the executive for adoption. So we turn to item 5A, contained on the pages 35 to 132, recommendations of the Executive Council for Housing and Homelessness concerning the housing revenue account, medium-term financial strategy. Does Councillor Bird wish to introduce the agenda item? And you have, I think 10 minutes for the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I'll need 10 minutes, but okay, thank you. And I now wish to present the Housing Revenue Account Medium-Term Financial Strategy for 2023 to 24, which was approved by the Scrutiny Committee on November the 21st. This is one of 2 long-term strategy financial planning documents produced each year for housing landlord services provided by Cambridge City Council. We look at the assumptions we've made, consider any changes in the law, look at the wider economy and share any changes to the way we work so that we can adapt our forecasts. Our work here shapes the lives of over 7,000 tenants, so this strategy is enormous and important. It's a shame that the Westminster doesn't take housing as seriously. When I presented the housing budget to the council last year, I joked that we had 5 housing ministers between 2022 to 2023. And express the hope that Rachel McLean would survive the summer. It is my sad duty to report that while she did indeed survive the summer, she was fired on November the 13th. And she has been replaced by Lee Rowley, who I am sure you recall has held the post before. But since it was only for 6 weeks in 2022, I don't think it really counts. The government may not take housing seriously, but we do. So today I want to talk about 4 things: rent levels, repairs, new builds, and our tenancy audits. First, to the rent. Last year we raised rents by 5%, lower than the amount we could have asked for. We knew that families were suffering and that we needed to do all we could to help them. However, that came at a cost to our budgets and our ability to maintain and improve our housing stock. So for 2024-25, we propose to raise rents by 7.7%. Over 60% of our tenants receive some form of help with housing costs, but we know this is a burden, and I don't welcome the choice we have to make. But this will let us balance our budget in the longer term. And it will let us make the progress on our target to get 1,700 of our properties to the EPCC level of energy efficiency, something that will reduce energy costs for tenants over the long term. And we will pay for the dedicated retrofit manager to help with the adaptations. We believe that the rent rise is in line with the government guidelines, but there is a risk that the government will impose a cap to increase of 7%, as they did for 23-24. If that happens, we'll need to revise our spending plans and our financial forecasts. We will know this in January 24, and I will inform Council at that time. So now I'll go on to tenancy audits. As we promised, we have been conducting an audit of all our properties, and between April and to the end of October, we've done 342 homes were checked, and we identified over 900 actions. These include 39 cases of damp mould condensation. We carried out 147 repairs, found 14 unauthorised adaptations. We also identified 12 properties where disabled adaptions were outstanding. 12 were for drug dealing, and importantly, 19 homes were identified domestic abuse that could be reported. We also found hoarding issues, which can be a fire safety issue. The audit has been very successful and will help us maintain our housing stock and support our tenants and provide a better service for everybody. And I hope it carries on. I'll go on to repairs. Every tenant should be able to expect that repairs are carried out promptly, efficiently. And we've taken on the challenge of changing the way we work as part of Right People, Right Place, Right Time, Right Reason programme. We will start next year, and this covers housing repairs and maintenance teams. As part of it, we will have streamlined our out-of-hours process to reduce costs and resource needs and speed up the handling of genuine emergencies. We are changing the way we manage stores so that the staff doing repairs don't need to return to Cowley Road site between jobs and have equipment they need. This will help tenants and also reduce our carbon impact. With this, we're going to improve the ways we manage repairs with better software, cleaner management of contractors, and help our teams to their virtual jobs better. New builds. Now to our building programme, we continue to deliver on our promise to build great homes for people of Cambridge. We've completed 448 homes under the 500 homes programme. Overall, we have a total of 838 overall homes completed, with a further 91 underway. Under the current 10-year housing delivery programme, 695 homes are currently approved for delivery. Of those, 163 replace old stock, 378 will be let on social rent and capped at local housing allowance, and 213 will be let at 80% market rent, helping to provide homes for families with worker connections. The local centre registration scheme for East Barnwell has been approved at the Housing Scrutiny Committee, giving us BREEAM. Excellent community facilities, shops and 120 council homes. And we're still going for highly sustainable housing, with the council's first passive houses certified homes being delivered in 2024, sorry. All homes being checked against passive house performance and a target of 20% net gain in biodiversity. And water use is 100 litres per person per day. Our housing strategy is sound and I'm sure you will want to support it. It represents the hard work of our officers, staff, who've had to adapt to a different and complicated situation with lots of uncertainties. I'd like to thank them as well as our tenant and leaseholder representatives for their continued commitment and support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bird, and that was well within the 10 minutes. Now we have the opposition spokes each have 10 minutes to reply, or they may reserve their right. So Councillor Tong and Councillor Martinelli, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right of reply? Could you, through Councillor Tong, could you speak into your microphone?
Sorry, I mean, I'm fine with speaking now, but which order? I don't mind.
And Councillor Martinelli, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right of reply?
I'll just speak. Thank you.
So you would both like to speak. So Councillor Tong, if you'd like to speak. And you have 10, and you have 10 minutes maximum.
Amazing, thank you. Sorry, I got a bit confused about the order. I'll try and also be quite brief. I would like to say thank you to all the council officers that worked on this. It's a really, really fantastic document. It's incredibly in-depth and, you know, it's a great piece of work and emphasises some of the really good stuff that we're working towards and we're doing at the moment. One of the things I did want to sort of talk about is the marginality of what we do. So one of the things that the document really shows is the small number of houses which we're net gaining on average. So every year we have a net gain after things like right to buy and necessary demolitions of around 11.3 council properties, which, you know, is quite a small amount. Obviously, I'm not trying to condemn our work through that. We are going against big national government policies that makes it very, very hard. However, I think that does emphasise how important it is for us to retain properties when we can and not be overly wasteful. So I'd like to talk about a few particular developments that I think are interesting in this regard. One of them is Eakin Road, where obviously, as part of the proposed redevelopment, there is a potential loss of 32 houses, 22 of which are council houses. That may sound like quite a small number. 22, you know, there's a lot of houses in Cambridge. However, it's important to note that is around 2 years of our potential net gains in housing stock. I think that even though a lot of people on the estate, particularly people in flats, would be okay with the entire site being redeveloped, I think it's quite important to note that we're maybe not the best at communicating exactly the level of building we're doing. And I think perhaps if they, you know, were aware of these factors, you know, minds would be changed. In that regard, I think it would be better if we could, you know, make some of these facts more accessible and digestible to people, because I think the HRA in general is rather arcane and impenetrable to a lot of people. To move on to like other developments that I mentioned to HRA, in regards to like Fanshawe, it's disappointing to see the potential downscaling of the plans with a move away from 100% affordable rent. You know, I think that's quite obvious considering that Cambridge is really, really in need of a more affordable renting place at the moment. The ensuing reduction in budget to only 13 million is, you know, that's natural as a result, but I thought I'd flag that as a thing that I find, you know, interesting. One of the last things I just wanted to briefly mention was the great stuff that the HRA is allotting to the East Barnwell redevelopment. Sorry, not redevelopment, but development. I'm very, very excited to see East Barnwell get some more funding put into it. I think it's particularly interesting because by Barnwell in general is one of the most deprived places in the city, and Cambridge itself is already one of the most unequal cities in the UK. I think a lot of people say it's either first or second most unequal. So it's great to see some potential there for more affordable housing for people, especially because I have people on the daily get in contact with me about a desire to move to a new place. One of the things that I think this does draw attention to as well is Abbey People, the local charity that does a lot of work there. Obviously, with any of these redevelopments, I think it's really important that we don't push out such a integral heart to the community. Abbey People, they do a lot of work. They run a food bank, which is used by people across Cambridge. I know people all the way over in Chesterton that go there in order to get food. And I know in the last year they've had around 11,400 visitors. So I think any development we do is really, really important that we keep that in mind and make sure they have a place in the community. So to sort of summarise, I want to say our strategy is really good, but I think it's important that we keep in mind not to be wasteful with what we're doing, and especially not to leave certain amenities and benefits we have to eventually get lost in the shuffle.
Thank you, Councillor Tong. Councillor Martinelli, you have up to 10 minutes, and then I will be opening the floor for debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so I will speak for our group on the HRA MTFS. I think our concerns regarding aspects of housing strategy have been well documented over recent years. And I think this MTFS is particularly important as we are now beyond the financial era of the devolution grant, which over the last decade has been a significant contributor to the building programme, which, as Councillor Tong points out, has increased the number of council homes in Cambridge by around 4 or 5%, an increase which, of course, is welcome. To fill this gap, the council must take on substantial risk by borrowing, and despite this, the nature of what the HRA will be able to provide going forward is changing. At committee, we see that this lack of accessible central grants is driving in developments increasingly dominated by market homes or homes at intermediate rent. Again, welcome, but not necessarily serving the housing needs register in the same way, and a definite change in what we've seen up until this point. As Councillor Bird outlined, rent increases below inflation in the previous cycle have driven a significant rental gap at the cost of supplying services to council homes has continued to rise. And I think from my point of view, it's important to clarify that this rent rise this year alone will not balance the books. In fact, we're looking at several years of above inflation rent increases should the government permit it. And should the government not permit it, it will create significant financial pressures. So that will be up till 2029, we're increasing rents above inflation per the document, which is a substantial challenge for tenants and for the uncertainty that it gives the council. The audit of the housing stock you outlined is welcome. However, we know this is not comprehensive or definitive, and much of the housing remains unaudited, and as you note, there will likely be many more issues uncovered. And I'm not convinced this strategy allocates within it the resource to deal with those as yet to be uncovered, sort of unknown unknowns of the housing stock. We know we've seen complaints continue to rise. Damp, condensation and mould, as mentioned, continues to be an issue, and we await the numbers from this winter. The state of return voids this year has been a particular red flag. All of this leads to financial issues as the houses return to us, take longer to repair and remain out of use, not gathering rent for longer. And I can't see in this strategy adequate resource to reverse that spiral. We need not so much maintenance as a programme of active repair and revitalisation for much of our stock. Meanwhile, this council declared a climate emergency 4 years ago. And whilst I appreciate this is extremely challenging, and we, of course, having pushed for them originally, support the moves to passive house and certainly water maintenance, we still know relatively little about how much it will cost to achieve the decarbonisation required of the council housing stock. So overall, for our group, I think we need to see a better plan to not only build, but also to ensure the housing stock does not continue to deteriorate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martinelli. So I now open the floor for debate. Councillor Thornborough.
I think it's wonderful news that the City Council is building council houses to passive house standards. And what other developer is building passive house standards in this numbers in this town. No other developers are. We are building more than anyone else. Not only are we building the most energy efficient house as an exemplar to other councils, they are really sustainable developments as far as the community is concerned. Our new council homes are embedded in the community, and I think we're one of the first councils to actually win an award for community architecture, which was the ironwork site. So the council is also is in an extraordinary position to be able to move existing communities from council homes into the new ones, so that these really poor quality existing homes can be redeveloped to passive house standards. And then the communities that moved out will have the ability to move back to where they were. And this is one reason why you say that there are low numbers of net homes being developed at the moment, is because there is this process of using, taking away the very poor quality homes and building the new homes. So that at the moment there may be a small, low net numbers, but when the new sites come forward, those numbers will be really high. So I think we are all to be congratulated on the superb council house development, truly sustainable in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Thornborough. What I omitted to say was that you have up to 3 minutes to speak. So I have Councillor Davey on my list, and then I have Councillor Pound, and then Smart. So, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I have to declare an interest in that I used to be on the board of Abbey People, but nonetheless it's probably worth saying that I was on the board for about 4 years. So I welcome Councillor Tong's remarks in relation to ensuring ongoing negotiation takes place with Abbey People. It's important, though, it's not easy always to get it right, because as you can appreciate, we have to talk to them, they can bring money in, but there's also about our responsibility to other organisations within the city. I'd also like to welcome Councillor Tong's remarks regarding the overall strategy, and that's very welcome, particularly around your proposals in relation to Eakin Road. The one thing I'm speaking really is to just say there's a reassurance that it's our understanding there will be no net loss on Eakin Road council properties, regardless of whether it's a smaller renovation or a full-scale renovation. But thank you, Councillor Tong. Most welcome.
Councillor Tong, you want to declare an interest?
Sorry, yeah, just while I remember, I made, because I didn't anticipate speaking about Abbey People, it just sort of came up. I've done a lot of stuff with Abbey People too, and I've been to like their gala recently. Should probably flag that as a potential thing.
Thank you, Councillor Tong. So we now have Councillor Pound, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just also like to reassure Councillor Tong. As we raised at the last Housing Scrutiny Committee last week, whilst we think the East Barnwell development will be fantastic, it will be a big, big benefit to the area and to the city, Councillor Robertson and myself and Councillor Holloway also raised the issue with the officers that whilst it's being developed, we do need to be very mindful of the local residents and the facilities that they rely on, particularly the shops, the food bank. And so we did remind the officers, and we will continue to keep an eye and make sure that as the development progresses, their needs as well are also considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pound, and Councillor Smart, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Tong, you said quite a few things. I just want to comment on one of the things you said. I'll leave the others to Executive Councillor for Housing. So it's interesting, your substantive main and first argument seemed to be saying that, through you, Chair, by the way, that the hundreds of houses that we build in Cambridge over many years under a Labour administration since 2014 seem to be negated by the national policy of right to buy and make them meaningless in your eyes. Now, your colleague behind you, Councillor Bennett, may well be familiar with the balance sheet. And it seems to me that because we're building houses but also losing some, doesn't mean that building houses is a bad or wrong or useless thing to do. If we didn't do that, we'd have a much smaller number of council houses in Cambridge. So I don't really understand the nature of your argument. It seems completely meaningless. But thank you anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Anna Smith.
Thank you. I'll be really brief, but I think many of us in this chamber have not been councillors for the 10, 20, 30 years that perhaps one or two of us have been. It's therefore easy, I think, to take what's happening with council house building in this city for granted, because we're all used to it. Now, when I became a councillor in 2015, I could probably have counted just on my fingers, maybe going onto my foot, the number of new council houses that have been built recently. And there are now hundreds. And they're not only hundreds of council homes, but they're hundreds of incredibly high quality council homes that if they were on the private market, I wouldn't have been able to afford as a private customer because they're too nice. And I just want to pay tribute to the amount of work that has happened in this city with politicians and officers over so many years, doing so much for the people of our city and the people who need it most, delivering high quality, environmentally friendly council homes that are beautiful to live in for the people in our city with the greatest need. And I think we should all just really remember that and say thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Is there anybody else? Councillor Bennett.
No, it's because I'm listening to it, so I better go, Mum. I'll ring you a bit later, all right? Bye.
I think we've had a blip there with someone online. Councillor Bennett, would you like to speak? And you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. After all that, I think anything I say would be anticlimax. What I want to say is that my wonderful young colleague, Councillor Tong, is not trying to bash Labour. We've all looked at the national statistics together. We know that over half of local authorities built no council homes at all in the last year. We know that some local authorities have basically just got rid of their social housing stock and shoved off and outsourced them to third-party providers. No one on the Green side is going to say that you are doing a bad job on this. Point Councillor Tong wanted to make, particularly as hopefully we're coming up to a general election, is that the Conservative policy of right to buy is undermining everything that is done here in Cambridge. And to say that we hope that you will, when you come to your party conferences, that you will consider raising an anti-right to buy motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you. I just thought we focused a lot on Councillor Tong's comments, but not necessarily replied so much to Councillor Martinelli's comments. So I thought I'd maybe focus on that a bit. I think the point about obviously the change in the way in which the council houses are funded is a very valid one and an important one that we have to consider. And you're right that we are now going to be increasing that borrowing significantly. I think what is a bit less fair is the fact that you then say, okay, well, why aren't you building as many social rented council homes? Because actually part of the risk management, I suppose, is to have some of these schemes which are mixed and some which have 80% affordable homes and some which are for market sale, because I suppose that's the model we've gone with now with KIP. It's not ideal, and obviously if we had more devolution money and more money from the government, then that would be great, but we are trying to manage the risk as best we can, I suppose, and just balance those issues. But thank you for raising them.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. And is there anybody? No? Councillor Moore. Sorry, apologies, Councillor Moore.
That's fine. Thank you. I'll be super quick. And just to say that by building homes to sell, that's also facilitated the ongoing nature of the programme and meant that overall we've been able to build many more council homes as well as many more homes for rent and for sale. And that's why we're still building now. If we just built 100% council homes on the Mill Road depot, that would have used up all the money from having a combined authority. And so by managing it, we've been able to build more. That wasn't why I stood up, sorry. I actually just wanted to say how, just raise everyone's attention to the retrofit project, that this is a really positive project, but it also does highlight the challenge, the mountain that we've got to climb as a council, as a city, as a country, as a world, to retrofit our buildings, because this highlights the huge amount of work that's involved, the huge cost of it, and also the skills that are needed. But this is a really exciting project and that we'll be able to learn from and hopefully help us to roll out to more of our own housing stock and also to share with residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. So we've got Councillor Hussain and then Councillor Smith. Simon Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I saw this next 30 years, we are planning to the borrowing around 635 million, and the present, the interest rate is 5%. It comes 31.75 million interest to pay only. And within next 10 years, 425 million borrowing, we paying 21.25 million for interest. And existing borrowing, we have already 231 million, 572,000. That's interest we are paying at the moment 7.53 million. So what is our plan? How we pay the debt? We are just plan to borrow next 30 years, nearly 600,000 pounds. So we don't see any plan to how we pay the debt. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I neglected to say that I'm a board member of KIP, as is my colleague, Councillor Bird. One of the key features of the partnership is that it's brought capacities and competencies, not just within the council, but with our partner, Hill, to develop council houses in all social housing schemes, in mixed tenure schemes, and to build them to an ever-increasing standard of construction and energy performance. And not many councils have that. So it puts us in a prime position. So when we have a government that's interested in building council houses, meeting the needs of people that otherwise couldn't afford housing, we are very well placed to benefit from that. And the first sign of that was in the autumn statement, when the government has allocated funds for Cambridge, Leeds and London to accelerate the development of high quality housing. So I'm looking forward to a new funding environment from central government that's going to enable us to accelerate the delivery of our council housing programme. And I'm very pleased to be on the KIT board to support the development of the pipeline. And as my role as exec councillor, work with our property team on bringing forward commercial sites, which will also contribute to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? If not, I will turn to Councillor Bird. You have the right of reply and you have 5 minutes. Do you wish to reply?
Sorry, Madam Mayor. No, I don't think so. I think most people around the chambers have answered the questions. The only one is Councillor Hussain, so I'll speak to him and get him the information he really wants.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. I will now go to the vote, and please can I see those, and it's on the electronic voting. Please can I see those in favour? Oh, well, those in favour and those against, and if you would vote using the electronic voting system, please. Some confusion. Right. So, I must add what the numbers were. Oh, we haven't got Councillor Netson's absent. But she can't vote. Okay, so how many have you got? What's the number? Right, I haven't got the numbers from this. And how many abstain? Well, we've got, okay, they're not voted. Oh, yes, it's on here. Apologies, I'm being a bit dozy here. Right, so 27 for, none against, and 11 abstentions. And of course, we have some people who are not in, who have apologised and not here. So that means that the recommendations are agreed. Thank you very much. So we can now turn to Agenda 5B on pages 133 to 156. So this is the recommendation of the Executive Council of Finance and Resources for the Treasury Management Half-Yearly Update Report 2023 to 24. So the various recommendations are not numbered, but that's just to warn you. But was that updated? Yes, it has been updated. So I hope you have got the numbered versions in the information pack here. So does Councillor Simon Smith wish to introduce the item? And you have 5 minutes. Oh, no, it's 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes. Sorry about this, it is 5 minutes for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Whilst this is an incredibly important report, it's rather difficult to make poetry out of this prose. It is a technical report. I think I just want to make a few comments about it. I mean, the first is that the Council's adopted the SIPFA County Code of Practice on Treasury Management and works to comply with that code of practice. The Council has works with the specialist advisors, Link Asset Services, that seek to ensure that all the counterparties are sort of manage the risk relating to them. When it comes to loans to councils, that's quite challenging at the moment because so many are giving notice of their ability to balance their budgets. But no council has ever gone bust. The government wouldn't allow that to happen. And when we've had councils that have issued 114 notices, they have paid in a timely manner. I'd also like to refer to ESG. This is something that the officers have been asked to look at in depth and have responded by investing in a firm fixed-term deposit arrangement by Standard Chartered this is a sustainable deposits fund. And then when you look at the table in the appendix, which shows the profile of our lending, let me just refer you to that. It shows that our money is lent to other organisations that are creating public value, as local authorities, or they're creating social value because they're third sector. And the officers are committed to making further investigations into how we can have this ethical form of investment while still retaining the primary responsibility of managing risk and maximising and optimising returns on the money. So as you'll see, due to high interest rates, there was effectively a much higher rate of return received on the balances in this financial year, and there's a forecast for similar higher rates of return for the forthcoming year. So that's really all. Susan, that's all I want to say on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I just want to say that what I said about numbering is incorrect. That's on agenda item 5C. So I'll now open the floor for debate, but before we do that, would the spokes, Councillor Young and Councillor Bennett, wish to speak now or reserve their right? And you have 5 minutes. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. I'll speak now. I want to congratulate officers that we do have a first small move to the Standard Bank Sustainable Deposit Scheme. It's not just a question of putting our money in ethical resources and ethical deposits, but also we need to be ensured that we do not end up with legacy and stranded assets. As a result of climate change. I also want to invite Councillor Simon Smith to repeat the assurances we were given at Strategy and Resources that none of our local authority deposits are behind in arrears on interest payments or have indicated any difficulty in repayment because of the extreme public anxiety which has been exacerbated by the bad news about Nottingham earlier this week. Thank you.
And Councillor Young, would you like to speak now or reserve your right to reply?
I'll speak now.
Thank you.
As Councillor Smith has said, this is a fairly technical document, and there's not really very much to say other than the council is within its prudential indicators indicating that it's in sound financial health. So that's a really good thing for the people of Cambridge. The one thing I would like to say really and point out to everyone here and also those listening, the council is benefiting from the absolutely catastrophic Conservative central government budget, which has created high interest rates. And because the council has got cash at the moment, it's earning a higher interest. However, we have plans to borrow more and spend more money, and that's going to change in the next few years. And that sort of underlies the need in the future to be careful and prudent with our spending plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. So I now open the floor to debate. Have we got anybody who wishes to speak? No? Okay, well then, so Councillor Smith, do you wish to have the right of reply? And you've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the comments that were, questions that were raised. On the first point, clearly, no public sector body would contemplate investing in destructive forms of investment, and that's why we're pursuing the ESG approach as far as it's possible, notwithstanding the primacy of minimising risk and optimising returns. That's part of the code, and we can't get around that as much as we'd want to. So, yes, I'm in full agreement with what you're saying on this matter. And if we can invest in funds that are orientated, focused on generating public value and social gain, then we will do so. In respect of local authority deposits, it is difficult. It's a very challenging environment at the moment, and what we're finding is that local authorities are just putting out Section 114 notices without really advance notice of their financial difficulties. So it is quite challenging. When an investment is made, at the time, it's considered to be like minimum risk. But then those circumstances could change, and then we're exposed to what is an apparent risk. And I understand the public perception that there's risk, but in reality, there isn't. So that's a dilemma for us. But in terms of the risk management, I think there is no risk. Otherwise, we wouldn't continue to do it. But I will talk to the officers about that concern again, and give you some reassurance on it, Councillor Young. When it comes to the interest income, of course, as Councillor Bennett reminded us this time last year, we've also got high rates of inflation that are actually higher than the rates on the interest that we're gaining, and therefore the value of our cash is declining in terms of its purchasing power. But nevertheless, it is a welcome source of revenue at this point. Now, predecessors of yours, Councillor Young, have come to this chamber and said that we're an underspending authority. And actually now you're saying you have to be careful about the amount of money you're spending, because you're going to be losing a revenue from interest, and you're going to be paying interest. And we understand that. We appreciate that point. But it's our job to spend the money for the benefit of the people of this city, rather than to hoard the cash. And if we're in a position to fund the interest payments, then we should do so, because it means we can house more people, we can provide services for people, and that's what we're here for. We're not here as kind of like a fund that's here to just generate cash. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I will now go to the vote. Please can I see those in favour of the recommendation and against? And obviously we're using the electronic voting system, so thank you. And also abstentions. Thank you. So have we got? Yeah, what Councillor Hosei? Okay, so the resolution is the recommendation is passed unanimously with 38 votes. Thank you. So I'll now move on to agenda item 5C, on pages 157 to 222, recommendation of the Executive Council for Finance and Resources for the General Fund Medium-Term Financial Strategy 2023 to 4 to 2032 to 33. Now, this is the one where if members could note that the recommendations were numbered originally on the version that went out, a numbered version of the recommendations is contained within the information pack on pages 11 to 12. Councillor Smith, do you wish to introduce this item? And you've got up to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to understand why there's a forecast in this document for substantial savings over the next 5 years, we need to consider the impact of the government's stewardship of the economy, national budget, and its regulatory framework for local government finance. Together, these bound the Council's agency in raising money for and delivering services in the city. The government requires local authorities to prepare and approve the certainty of a balanced budget. In turn, the government creates uncertainty for local authorities due to annual as opposed to multi-year financial settlements, won't it approach to introducing local government finance reform, and the introduction of out-of-the-blue new regulations such as minimum revenue provision. It's akin to being told to push a supermarket trolley in a straight line by someone who's just broken all the wheels. This uncertainty sits on top of Tory government that for 13 years has systemically acted against the interests of the British people and business. This government's fiscal and public policy failures have combined to break Britain. These failures have had and continue to have a profound impact on the demands for public services and the public resources available to meet them. In the 1970s, Britain was one of the most equal of the rich countries. Today, it's the second most unequal after the United States. The Equalities Trust has estimated equalities in income, wealth and power cost the UK £128 billion a year compared to the top most equal countries. This causes huge damage to our economy. It leaves us with shorter, healthy working lives, poor education systems, more crime and less happy societies. And I want to turn to the four forces of the Tory apocalypse. Brexit. We were promised sunlit uplands. We got economic disaster. The Centre for European Reform estimates Brexit costs Treasury £40 billion in lost revenue in the year to June 22. This equates to £1,400 for every one of the UK's 28 million taxpayers. Austerity. The OBR, in its report, Austerity Broke Britain, says voters were told austerity would result in faster growth. But instead it reduced bargaining power of workers, contributed to the UK's low wage, low productivity economic model. Austerity, it says, was never a necessity, but just a poor economic choice. Most economists agree. Austerity is counterproductive. Cuts public investment, destroys the economy's long-term growth potential, restricting growth for decades. There's one area of growth to note, though. The number of food parcels handed out by the Trussell Trust increased by 2,612% under Cameron's premiership. When Cameron took up his £1 million a year role as a part-time special advisor to Greensill, perhaps he was heeding George Osborne's advice to fix his roof while the sun was shining. Danny Dyer spoke to the nation with his pithy remarks on him. This brings me to sleaze. Tory sleaze, it's such a crowded field, it's hard to really choose. But PPE procurement shines a light on what matters to the Tories. On finding it not followed advice to stockpile PPE, The government created a VIP lane that led to prioritising politically connected suppliers being 10 times more likely to win contracts than suppliers outside of the lane. The government subsequently wrote off 8.7 billion of spending on PPE during COVID. Of this, 4.7 billion was written off for overpaying and 2.6 billion for items unsuitable for use. Trustean economics are for pause. This episode brought an even higher level of incompetence to Tory stewardship public finances. Due to the inflationary risk of the proposed 45 billion of unfunded tax cuts, the Bank of England raised the base rate. City economists, not noted for their humour, called this the moron premium. The Resolution Foundation calculates the Truss government cost 30 billion of Jeremy Hunt's 60 billion packages of tax rises and public spending, austerity 2.0. The government's autumn statement confirms continuation of high taxes and austerity for public services. The IFS forecasts that unprotected public services, including local government and housing, will see a cumulative 13% cut in revenue spending for the period 2029. Clive Betts MP, at a recent seminar hosted by Ernst Young, predicted in the next 5 years 50% of all local authorities will need to issue Section 114 notices as they'll be unable to deliver a balanced budget. So in the final reckoning, average pay is no higher than since 2008, the worst period for wages since the Napoleonic Wars. A government that accepts rising numbers of people relying on food banks and warm hubs has lost its way. It needs to be served at best value notice. Our moral compass points us to do everything in our power to fight the indignities of poverty and lost life chances, promote good growth, building affordable housing, promoting net zero carbon development, protecting and enhancing the environment and biodiversity, and delivering services that meet community needs. Our medium-term financial strategy makes assumptions and forecasts which provide the basis for preparing a balanced budget for 24-25 and planning for the years ahead. The IFS SIPFA District Council Network Local Government Finance Model illustrates the financial challenges we face, a net savings requirement of 11 million from the £74 million general fund for the 5-year period from 24-25. And to ensure that we don't face the cliff edge due to the funding gap, we're not going to make more savings than we need to. We're going to work to identify savings of £6 million per annum over the next 3 years. And it's proposed to offset that by allocating 1.5 million per annum from the business rates retention monies. And the balance is going to be provided through our Cambridge transformation programme. So in the last 2 years, our transformation programme has created the strategic conditions, the preconditions for a more efficient and effective organisation. Enhanced customer focus, stronger strategic partnerships, and an entrepreneurial approach to service improvement and budget management. A senior management review has created a flatter and more empowered management structure, leading challenges about service purposes and focus on innovations in service design, digitalisation, and operational delivery. A fundamental change in our ICT service capability will accelerate deployment of digital data and technology projects to support service improvements and the savings that we need. We now know the City Services Review, or one-off investment in our transformation programme, can yield exceptional recurring savings without adverse impacts on services. And the shared planning service has been relying on agency staff due to recruitment difficulties. A new leadership team and staff have together designed and adopted new working practices and created such a positive culture. There are no leavers from the planning policy and strategy team in 22-23. And there's currently just one vacancy in development management. The government has taken recent interest in Cambridge as the most intensive science and technology cluster in the world. A key message to government is simply this: funding for high-quality public services is vital to retain and reinforce global competitiveness and accommodate growth. Our demand is simple: fund our public services so our communities can have a share of the wealth being created in this city. With Cambridge Labour, There's a safe pair of hands on the management of the council's finances resources. Our proven stewardship leaves headroom to invest in service transformation, invest in our commercial property assets to generate higher returns and sites of new housing, build new community centres and initiate a community wealth building partnership. In the forthcoming BSR, we will make provision to deliver our manifesto pledges and seek to protect from inflation the value of grants that we make to those voluntary and community organisations who provide invaluable support for our community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So we have up to 10 minutes for the spokespersons, Councillor Young and Bennett. Otherwise, well, when we have the debate, otherwise 3 minutes per councillor. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right to reply? Councillor Young?
I'll speak now, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and Councillor Bennett, would you like to speak afterwards? Okay, Councillor Young, and yes, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the revised process for the budget this year, and this is the medium-term financial statement, which sets the parameters for the actual final budget, the envelope, so to say. And officers have applied inflation and pay rises to our costs, done something similar with our income, and come up with a budget gap, so-called. And that basically is the difference between our income and our costs. And they've done the calculation and come up and said that we need to find savings of 11.1 million. However, we're only trying to save 6 million, which is a little bit peculiar. The range of savings that's needed is thought to be between 6 and 28 million. However, the sort of base case is thought to be 11. So there is a wide range of possible savings that we will need, and that is dependent on a number of things, such as central government funding and inflation rates and that kind of thing. So this document is very lacking in any detail of how those savings are going to be found. There is only details about one item, which is the Our Cambridge project, and that's a transformation project for how the council operates. It's been running almost since 2014, but perhaps this version of it only for the last couple of years. And we are being asked to provide yet more funding to create some more savings. Now, this project so far has found annual savings of 260,000, and that goes up in 3 years' time to annual savings of 1.2 million. This extra time will find a further, will increase that to 2.6 million, which is not even half of the 6 million that the document says that we want to find. And the stretch target, which, you know, if it's a stretch target, there's not very much certainty about whether we're going to reach it or not, and that takes us to 3.9 million. So that's not 6 million either. There's completely no information on how we are going to try and meet that savings target at all, which in itself, the 6 million, is less than the 11 million that we say that we're told is the budget gap. I have to say this is quite a leisurely approach to saving money, and relying on a change of central government, I think, is very unwise. Rachel Reeves does not strike me as a soft touch at all. She's our new, going to be, hopefully, our new Iron Lady. I do think we should be aiming to stand on our own 2 feet than expecting money from central government. So it's
slightly odd as well that we now have a reserve policy, but reserve policy doesn't really address what we should do with our reserves. There is a projection that the reserves were going to go up to 42 million, which is astonishing in a time of cutbacks and from central government. Now, this council has a policy of pushing business rate growth and not putting it into budget and not assuming that it's going to happen, which is, you know, pleasingly prudent. So I can understand that, but we are a growing city. There are big plans for growth in many different areas, and we're only taking a very small proportion of that into to meet our budget gap. So this is a bit of a mixture of a document. We're not looking for savings that we say that we need. On the other hand, we've got these amounts that we say we're going to get, but we're not going to get it. We're not taking or relying on that income that's going to come. So I think it's a very a lack of consistency and detail in this document. My final kind of comment is that there's not very much detail on the capital spending. There's mention of various projects, but the capital spending mentioned is just what's going to happen next year, and there's no kind of longer term information of the plans that the council has, the administration has. So just to summarise, there's rather a lack of detail on what the council is planning, and it's a bit difficult to comment really. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Young. May I turn to Councillor Bennett? And again, you have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the perils of speaking third, particularly when the second speaker is Councillor Young, is that a large part of my speech will end up being ripped up. So forgive me if this sounds a little unrehearsed and impromptu. So we're here to talk about a financial 5-year plan. And one of the things that I always talk about is financial plans are not separate from our overall plans. They're just our general plans translated into the language of money. So it's not alien, it's not in the room apart. It is something where we can all have a valid opinion and our opinion matters. So it's really important that all 42 councillors feel comfortable participating and that we embrace the power of 42. I'm sorry, I had to put a Douglas Adams reference in. And to do that, we need to consider how these reports are presented and continue to refine how they are presented to make them more digestible to councillors. Because if they are opaque and difficult to understand to us, then we're not going to access the power of 42, and we certainly aren't going to access the power of 150,000, which is all the residents of Cambridge. And it's only really by all working together that we can get the best report results we need in these very challenging circumstances. So I hope that we will continue to work to refine the reports, and as the reports become more comprehensible, that people who are not accountants, people who are not former finance officers, will also feel comfortable in getting stuck in and making recommendations about what information they want to see and how they want to see it. So, 5-year plan. I've said that this is just our general plan in financial language. So, let's take a look about, are we on track? And the answer is, unfortunately, we're not. We have an aspiration to be at net zero by 2030, but we do not have the resources from central government to get us on that track. We are falling short. Now, it's usual not to be able to do everything you want to do financially. It's something we all live in. But this failure to act, to reduce emissions, to tackle the problem of urban heat island, to tackle our water shortage, and all our climate emergency issues means that we are heading on a one-way ticket to nowhere. So, although we have a responsibility to deliver a prudent and achievable budget that meets the local government finance rules, I would like us to see us document the shortfall and what we are unable to do because of the central government constraints, because we have a duty to tell the truth to our citizens and to tell them that everything is not fine, that yes, we are doing our best, but our best cannot be good enough under the current circumstances. And we need to say why. So, I've talked a bit about generalities, and I want to mention a few specific issues. The first is that, considering how limited our scope is to make things better in terms of emissions in a climate emergency, we need to be very careful not to do harm and to, not to sort of stop thinking about the climate emergency and accidentally do something that undermines our best efforts. And unfortunately, our proposal to move the modern Anglian sewage plant under a mile down the road at a cost to the taxpayer of 277 million is unfortunately a very good example of doing harm. I do not know what the inspector's decision is going to be at the appeal. We won't know for several months. But I hope that we will consider how we can reduce the damage that it does, perhaps even deferring the move to 2050, which is the date to which the current sewage plant is future-proof to, so that there is no waste of capacity and the large amounts of taxpayers' money that were invested. Do that. I have heard people say that there is no alternative other than building in the green belt to moving the sewage plant. But to be honest, it would be better to move in the green belt because at least you would be reducing the emissions from the decommissioning of the plant and the relocation. So, I now turn to consider Gove's 2040 agenda. He's clearly not thinking of Cambridge at all. He's thinking about sort of national tax revenues. Even the most basic look at the numbers shows how empty this plan is. An urban quarter for Cambridge, which has 60,000 houses, it's 15,000 houses, not 240,000. We have a water delivery group which has a budget which will scarcely do more than pay consultants' fees. I was the only Cambridge City Councillor who attended the last Cambridge Water Management meeting of Cambridge Water. And they are only planning to meet the growth that's in the local plan. And there are some very big challenges in doing so. One little reservoir out in Fenlands, even if it is not flooded, is not going to do anything towards these 240,000 houses in this growth agenda. If Mr. Gove and Ms. Reeves, when she succeeds him, are serious about supersizing Cambridge, they need to be thinking about supersizing our water supply. And they also need to consider the strain that growth puts on city services. It's not just providing the same things for greater numbers, but the growth in Cambridge and the increase in inequalities puts more pressure on our voluntary and community services. If Mr. Gove and Ms. Reeves want to supersise Cambridge, please give us the resources to do so, if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. So, is there any debate? Councillor Holloway, and then Davey I've got, Councillor Bick, so, and Sam Carling. So, Councillor Holloway.
Thank you. In response to Councillor Young's points, I think that this budget actually is prudent in not assuming income that we can't be certain of, and also prudent in not assuming cuts that we don't know for sure we will have to make yet, and not making those too quickly. We have only identified around 6 million in savings so far, that's true, and that's because it's hard to find savings. It's not an easy thing to do without making what Councillor Bick may in the past have called knee-jerk cuts. It's a challenging process. That's why the transformation process has been going on a long time. It's why it's costing more money, but all of that money is one-off spending as opposed to recurring savings that will take place every year. So I think if the Liberal Democrats have suggestions on savings that they would like to make, that's good, and that's very helpful, so let's discuss those. But it is a difficult process. The transformation process is about cultural change as well, so that we don't just cut things and then they're not there and then services are lost. It's about changing the way the council works so that we can actually make those in a more sustainable way, and I think that's a sensible way of going about it.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. And was it Councillor Davey and then Councillor Bick? Did you? Oh, right. So I think it was Councillor Bick next and then Councillor Carling. Is that right? Yeah, Councillor Bick, and you've got 3 minutes. Oh, it was sorry. Councillor Davey, Councillor Bick, Councillor Carling. Thank you. Right, Councillor Davey.
Thank you very much. A couple of comments really. If I can tackle one or two of Councillor Bennett's points first. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about 2040 and Hartree. I'm not entirely sure this is the discussion place for that, because we're talking about Simon's budget. Although what I did pick up, if I've got it right, was that you as the Green leader were advocating building on the Green Belt, which I have to say I was somewhat surprised by. But we'll no doubt have that discussion later in due course. In terms of Councillor Young's points, if I can go back to the purpose of the MTFSP, or whatever the initials might be, it's a review of the financial information halfway through the year, making assumptions and forecasts as the future. So you ask for detail. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the document that would provide you that detail, because that obviously comes from the BSR, and the budget process then, which we'll have a full debate on shortly. Also, in response to, I think, both questions by Councillor Young and Councillor Bennett, we have included you in the review of the budget setting process, and we'd be welcome to have more thoughts to make it more feasible to the people in the future. The one bit I wanted to refer to is with regards to our Cambridge Transformation Programme, which again is coming into some critique. If I can draw your attention to the tables on page 194, which I hope is sufficient detail, despite what Councillor Young says, to indicate what we hope to achieve by extending the programme, simply extending the programme for a number of months into 2025. If we don't do this, we are not going to reach the targets that we hope to achieve. The reason we've not done this is because of the reasons that, again, have been outlined in the documentation that's been prepared. It's basically cover certain things, and some of the savings that are coming out as a result of that, which aren't actually part of the programme in the first place. So it's about learning. It was made, the initial programme was made on the assumptions made 18 months ago. So we're now trying to take forward and make sure that we can then progress and make the savings that were being required to try and make. And Councillor Smith has already indicated the savings targets that you allude to that are missing are coming from other sources. So I think I would just like to indicate that our Cambridge programme so far is doing very well, it is progressing, and I think it should therefore be extended. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Bick.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. A lot of what's in the paperwork for this item is necessary and good and will help hopefully get our way to the budget in February. But there are three concerns I wanted to speak to. One is that there is an absence of draft budget proposals like we saw at this point last year. We had a review of our budget procedure, which told us that this process of asking general consultative questions that are vague and high level is not common practice, it's not best practice, and it leaves us open to legal challenge for any changes in our budget that impact adversely on people. So I do think that although you have extended the time for this public consultation that started, consultation itself is about so significantly less, and in particular little, that the public can actually identify with. And that definitely does need looking at again, and a reversion, hopefully, to last year's practice. The second point I wanted to raise is about the transformation programme. It's something we support, something we believe should deliver the core of the savings that the Council requires, but the speed of this, oh dear, the speed of this is so slow. We have concerns that there has been a transformation programme, it's been rebranded and repackaged along the way for 10 years almost. And this is something that is unhelpful inside an organisation. It leaves staff in constant jeopardy. It leaves people in constant states of reorganisation and will start to bring its own costs into the organisation too, the longer that it goes on. I would ask, have we got the boundary right between what existing staff are expected to do and what additional staff are being brought in to do in relation to transformation? And can we not please speed this up? And the third point I want to raise is about reserves policy. So there is a reserves policy included in these papers. I'm pleased that there is a reserves policy. It's something that we had asked for in our budget amendment last year, but it is in no way adequate as a defence to a forecast level of reserves which rises to over £42 million by 2028-29. We see vague statements about things that can be used for with no evidence of any plans. You talk about city centre regeneration. Very good, great, but I cannot believe that this isn't more than just a symbol for we haven't made our mind up about anything. And really, it's not good enough. These level of reserves are almost obscene in relation to the sort of the stories of poverty and hardship that Councillor Smith has given us.
Thank you. You've had your 3 minutes. next. It's Councillor Carling, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to make some responses to some of Councillor Young's comments earlier and then one of Councillor Bick's just now as well. Councillor Young, you started off your contribution by talking about how the MTFS sets the parameters for final budgets, but then you spent quite a lot of time and the rest of it asking for those final budget details now, which, again, as Councillor Davies said, this is not really the right time. This will come through in the new year. You then expressed a bit of confusion about the 6 million savings versus the 11 million savings target, and I think that's because the 6 million is for the next 3 years. The 11 million is the 5-year savings requirement, but it would be foolish to sort of try and save the 5-year saving requirement in 3 years. That doesn't work. There could be significant changes between now and in the next few years coming, so it would be silly to try and not anticipate those. When the draft BSR comes forward, you'll see a lot of significant details on how savings are being achieved within city services. In my portfolio, we've carried out a senior management review and we're making a number of proposals that will help us to reach our targets without impacting on service delivery. Last year, as Councillor Holloway said, the Liberal Democrats criticised us for making knee-jerk cuts. She's been really keen to get that into I think it was the Cambridge Independent, because it was used every other sentence. But this year, you're asking us to make savings faster. I think a bit more consistency from the Liberal Democrats would be quite helpful in understanding sort of what it is that you want. In terms of reserves, we have been very clear that we intend to use the reserves to redevelop the Guildhall and to facilitate the Market Square project. So yes, Councillor Bitt, that is city centre regeneration, but we do have the details there. Neither of those in any way are vanity projects. They are well thought through projects that will provide significant opportunities going forward into the future to generate ongoing revenue from our spaces, improving our annual income while cutting our emissions, especially in relation to this building, yet further. Just to briefly respond to some of the things Councillor Bick said, again, there is an absence of draft budget proposals because this is the MTFS. It's a mid-year review. Budget proposals will come forward in the new year as per the changes to the process that we've agreed. The public consultation is not about less, it is about ensuring the public can give more detail about their key priorities rather than those being limited into specific budgetary proposals, and then we can address those priorities in the budget. We believe that that's the right way to go about doing this, but clearly we will ensure we review it, as always, after the cycle.
Thank you, Councillor Carling. Councillor Porrer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to highlight my disappointment and actually disagree with Councillor Carling, because what came forward last year, I'll point to page 252 of Strategy and Resources this time last year, were 15 proposals where you explain what you were thinking of getting public opinion on. And actually, I felt that worked well, because some of them changed. You know, I could say, I disagree with this one, or perhaps you had an Open Spaces Council time justified some of the changes very well. We didn't oppose them. This year, we've kind of gone back to where we were. It's just the MTFS with some very long plans. So if you look at the questions in the appendix on page 221 today, asking the public, should we stop delivering services that have a direct impact on residents' quality of life? Well, what my quality of life might be very different to Councillor Martinelli's or any of yours. They don't know what that means. Is that someone's job they're saying we should get rid of? I don't know what that means. So to me, this was brought in as a better form of governance, I think Councillor Bick alluded to allow us, but probably from your point of view, the community, our businesses, our stakeholders, our residents, to say, these are great ideas, these are not great ideas. And actually, I found it useful last year. You, I think, found it useful because you changed some of your bids. You know, this doesn't do that. I don't know whether I support some of these questions. Last year, I could say, I don't want the big weekend to be cancelled, or I do want this, or I don't like public toilets being closed, and actually you changed that as a result of the public feedback. Whereas actually what we're saying now is we're just going back to how we were 2 years ago, and we'll just get all of this in January, yet we've called an extra council meeting to sit here and look at the MTFS that used to just go through at the last council. So to me, I don't really know why we're doing this. If you want it to be just the MTFS business as usual, go back to how we did it 2 years ago. If you want it to be genuine public scrutiny, have questions that explain what you're thinking of doing, not committing you to doing them. Because to me at the moment, I'm just not quite sure why we're all here tonight. If all we're doing is saying, yeah, this is a statement of where we think we might go, and in 5 years, because actually when the public respond, you'll be able to just say, oh, they said this is why we're cutting this. And that means the public can't actually speak about that. So to me, this is a lost opportunity. And I'm sad because I did think last year it worked well for us as councillors, for you as the ruling group, but most importantly for our residents. and those who were consulted. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pura. Councillor Nestor. And again, you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and thank you, Councillor Smith, as well for bringing this to Council. Now, I just have a few comments, basically, that this is showing that we're doing things within the Council in order to maximize the value, and also we're bringing innovation. And innovation is sometimes opposed due to the challenges to the status quo. And following on Councillor Porter saying that the public don't understand what is on page 2021, I think that we're underestimating the public understanding of what the questionnaire is all about. And Councillor Bennett also mentioned our opinion matters. And I believe that this questionnaire, that is also accessible online, that, and I've seen it on social media as well, that it is actually asking people for their opinions. And if we don't bring forward innovation, we're just going to be debating the same issues time and time again without really looking into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nestor. Councillor Dryden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A bit of deja vu just came across when Councillor Bick was talking about the reserves. I remember when we was in opposition, you was in power, where you we actually said a very similar question to you about the reserves, and you gave us quite a good answer back why we're doing that. And I just wondered if you can remember that, why. And you probably wouldn't have asked us then.
Councillor Smart.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So it's interesting what Councillor Bennett said. Quite interesting the way that you sort of manipulated the discussion to talk about things that were nothing to do with finance. But all credit to you. But I found it interesting that you know, as has already been commented, that you were supportive of building on the green belt. But I wouldn't have thought you'd be saying that. And also that you were keen on having a supersized Cambridge, which I also thought you wouldn't really want to support. But you did. So the other thing I wanted to say was in your comments about the proposal to move the treatment works, the water treatment works. You seem keen to count the carbon used in the move, but you fail to look at the other side of the balance sheet. So the carbon saved. So at the proposed hard tree development, there is a so-called zero trip budget plan. So no additional vehicular journeys, building sustainable council houses rather than houses being built in the surrounding areas, and no consideration of the carbon costs of travelling from those remote areas to places of work. So I think if you're going to criticise the carbon used in something, you need to also consider the carbon saved and put those two together and see how they balance out. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I am responding Mr. Smith, Councillor Smith, some comments about Conservative Party keep high interest. That's why he get lots of difficulty for his midterm budget. So how he forget when Labour was in power, 2007 and 8, interest rate was 5.75%, and only Conservative is the only one party who keep the interest rate last 10 years less than 1%. And still he has a debt in £272 million, and he has a plan to borrow another £650 million over 30 years. And he have no plan to how we pay back. So we cannot be another Birmingham Council who run the bankruptcy. So we need to expand wisely and think wisely. Only Conservative is the party who care everyone, who care business, who care the transportation, how our leader forget we have a £400 million from Cambridge City deal, only the blessing of Conservative Party. Labour was in power, they never do it. So how we forget this money with more than £1 million should be Cambridge share infrastructure, housing development, but we are not using all the money for housing or these people who need it. We are always thinking about the road closure, line closure, congestion charge, and the road charge. That is our plan. And we are putting ourselves in the debt. So Conservative is the only one party who caring everyone. Thank you very much.
Councillor Tong, you wish to speak for 3 minutes.
Hello, I'd like to briefly respond to Councillor Smart's points. It's quite difficult on his response to what Naomi actually said, because I think it's quite far removed from the reality of what was actually mentioned, so I don't really know how to grapple with the point, other than that, you know, what Councillor Bennett said has been misrepresented.
Point of order, Chair. I completely responded to what was said. That was completely what I did do, just to say.
Okay, can I finish with my point? Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Tong.
That's fine, yeah. On my point of Naomi perhaps going off topic, I'm sure, sorry, hang on, I lost where I was going. I'm sure Councillor Smart, you know, knows that you can point of order if Councillor Bennett's going too off topic, so I'd invite him to do so in the future, as he's, you know, just shown he can do.
Councillor Smart, did you wish to reply?
I wasn't quite clear what Councillor Tong said there, actually, to be honest. But in terms of going off topic, Councillor Tong, I think you might have noted, through you, Chair, that I did, at the start, say all respect to Councillor Bennett for managing to manipulate the debate in the direction she wanted to go in, which is fine with me. I'm all for it.
Okay, thank you. Now, I don't think there's anybody else who wishes to speak. So, Councillor Smith, do you wish to take the right to reply? And you have 5 minutes.
Well, gosh, thank you everybody for those contributions. I'd like to start with Councillor Hussain. Which planet are you on? Really?
Yeah.
Seriously, low interest rates were the result of a catastrophic global financial catastrophe that was the product of neoliberalism, deregulation of bankers. And they actually embraced the moral hazard of expanding the money supply to such an extent there was a crash in the knowledge that sovereign governments would need to bail them out. And that's exactly what happened. And the interest rates had to fall to basically keep the economies going. That's why the interest rates are at that level. And I don't know whether you listened to my speech, but it was a step-by-step guide to how the Tories have actually bankrupted this country and trashed our public services. And if you look at the chart of NHS waiting lists, you'll see that they came down under Labour having gone sky high under a Tory government, and they're sky high now again. I just don't know how you have the cheek to come and say that the Tories do a good job and work for everybody. It's the top 1% that cost this country £100 billion a year at the cost of ordinary people, and it is a, well, to quote Elizabeth Truss, it's a disgrace. I had to get that off my chest, I'm sorry. So I just want to turn to the more rational parts of the discussion, and I refer to what Councillor Holloway had to say about how we're taking this prudent approach. I had hoped that Cinderella would be more popular in the chamber than she clearly is. But it was what Councillor Holloway said, which is we can't spend money that we're at risk of not getting in the future. And we shouldn't be making cuts we might not need to make. So, yes, we're not, at this point, projecting a savings of £11 million over the 5 years, because each year we will review the financial position and we will review and roll forward the savings requirement. So we mustn't make savings in haste. We take a sensible, prudent approach. We mustn't do nothing, but we mustn't do so little we create a cliff edge at some point further down the way. But to do and pursue the prudent approach, we do need to invest more in transformation. And I would say, Councillor Bick, I have a degree of sympathy with the point you were saying about transformation being too slow. But when you actually drill down into the detail and gather the facts, this team wasn't really properly staffed until March 21. And most local authorities do have a central team that can support service reviews and change and transformation. And this council didn't have that. Because it's basically been a very small hub and spoke organisation, and we're changing that, but we're having to make the investment in a place where we haven't had that previous investment. And I noted that Liberal Democrats abstained on the point of at SNR on the point about the request for funding for the transformation programme, and I do hope you will change your minds today and vote for that, because it's so evidently crucial for us to deliver the savings that we are putting forward. So we will, through that transformation programme, not just make savings, we will make every single pound we have work that much harder and that much better for the people that we serve. So if I just then turn to the challenge about the budget consultation. Let's just see the outcome of the consultation, and then let's review it and see whether we can change it the next time. Accept the challenge. And so I think that's as much as I wanted to say in response. But one thing on the reserves policy. The reserves policy, it doesn't...
Councillor...
How long have I got? 5, 10 minutes, 10 seconds?
10 seconds, not 5 or 10 minutes, but 10 seconds I'll give you.
10 seconds, right, fine. It's counter-convention not to show spending commitments that haven't been subject to approval, but they are hinted at or shown in the text. It assumes that there is no reset on business rates retention, and it excludes the 1.5 million that's going into the general fund. And so once you include the investments in the text and adjust it for the reset and for the contribution to the general fund, you will see that we're actually committing most of that cash.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Smith. So, I will now go to the vote, and we are intending to take the recommendations together. So we'll be using the electronic voting. Councillor Bick.
Yes, Chair, I have requested earlier this week that we take this vote in parts, please.
Okay, so I was actually rather expecting this. We will take the recommendations separately. So, and these are listed. So we'll take each one separately. If you are in agreement, Councillor Bick, we could take the general fund, the capital and the reserves as 3 items and vote on each of those separately. No?
Sorry, that doesn't really address it, Madam.
Okay, so you wish to have each item voted on separately. I will allow this. I think that's covered in the Constitution, that we need to do that. So we will be taking each item separately on the electronic voting. As soon as that's set up, thank you. But we're now voting on, so it's on item 1, which is to agree the incorporation of changed assumptions. Okay, so on recommendation 1, That has been passed by 27 votes with 1 against and 10 abstentions. So if we now go to item 2, which is to agree the 2023-4 revenue budget as set out in section 4. I'm not going to read out the whole recommendations. There are still a few people who haven't voted. Councillor Howard, Councillor Hussain. Thank you. So that has been passed. So item 2 has been passed with 38, well, it's unanimous, 38 in favour. Thank you. So we will now turn to item 3, changes to the capital plan. Councillor Howard, have you voted? Thank you. Sorry. Item 3, we have 26 in favour and 12 abstentions. So we now move to item 4 to agree the capital spending proposal, rephasing and scheme deletions as set out in the table. So for item 4, we have 38 in favour, so that's unanimous. So we now move to item 5 to agree the changes to the general fund reserve levels, prudent minimum balance, and the target level as set out in the agenda. And that is 37. Has somebody not voted? Thank you. So that is 38 in favour, so that's unanimous. We then move to item 6, which is the contribution of 700k general reserves and 274k funding release in the capital schemes to our Cambridge Transformation Reserve. So, I better vote. So we have 23 in favour and 15 abstentions and none against. So we then move to item 7 to approve the council's reserve policy as set out in Appendix E. So I think there's a few more right, okay. So, Councillor Howard. Right, okay, that's come through now. So we have 27 in favour and 11 against. So that is passed as well. And that's it. I think so. That's all. So that's all the recommendations for this item. So we can now. Oh, Councillor Smart.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but isn't 2.8 a recommendation as well?
Sorry, have I missed one out?
Isn't 2.8 a recommendation?
Oh, it's not on.
There was item 8 at the strategy and resources.
Sorry, who's speaking, please?
Apologies,
The
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Young, I couldn't hear you.
It's not in this meeting.
Thank you. It's not on my notes, so. Could we have a clarification, yes, from Councillor Smith?
Councillor Smart, the consultation was approved by the executive meeting.
Thank you. So that clarifies that. Thank you, Councillor Smith. So that means we can move to the oral questions. So, so request for a comfort break. So if Councillor Davey, would you want a full break or are you asking for a comfort break?
I would suggest 10 minutes if that's
Okay, 10 minutes, fine. I would like to get through the business quite quickly, but 10 minutes. And we will meet at 8:30. That gives you 12 minutes. Thank you. Item 6, oral questions. Please note the correctly ordered list of questions has been printed in a separate pack, which has been left on members' seats. And the list has also been published as a separate supplement on the meeting webpage. This item will last, as usual, a maximum of 30 minutes. The Executive Councillor, Chair or nominee will have up to 2 minutes to reply. The questioner will then have 2 minutes to put a supplementary question or seek clarification of the response to the original question. The Executive Councillor, Chair or nominee will have a further 2 minutes to reply to the supplementary question. At the conclusion of the 30 minutes, those questions that have not been answered may provide a written response to the member who put the question. So, Councillor Griffin, I think you have the first question.
Thank you. Question number 1, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the extremely valued and positive support of the City Food Hubs provide to and in their local communities. Food hubs were established during the pandemic response, and they still do invaluable work in supporting our most vulnerable residents at a time of great need. As the cost of food continues to rise, we're taking a partnership approach to continue to work on food justice in the city. This year, we, council officers and councillors, are working alongside the food hubs, Cambridge Sustainable Food and Cambridge City Food Bank to explore the more sustainable model of social supermarkets. We are funding a series of good food neighbourhood projects. On September the 21st, we undertook a research trip to Brighton to visit their inspirational food justice network. On the 4th of October, the City Council hosted a food justice conference at the Meadows, helping convene those who work in emergency food, food justice and community engagement sectors. City Council is supportive of the Sustainable Food Partnerships application in Going for Gold. The key areas of excellence are to take action and to develop the food justice framework to ensure that good, healthy food is accessible to all. So I would like to encourage others to support the movement at #YesWeCan, and would encourage local businesses, employers and those who can to donate to the current fundraising campaign. The fundraising food campaign aims to raise £10,000 to provide a bag of fresh fruit and veg produce to all those who will receive a food hamper from the City Food Bank this Christmas. Thank you.
Councillor Griffin, do you wish to put a supplementary question?
No, thank you. I would like to thank Councillor Wade for her response.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Question 2, please, Madam Mayor.
So, Councillor Bird, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, development proposal relates solely to the ATS and Merkett site. While it is proposed that some trees will be removed, with others planted within the site boundary, no trees are planned to be removed from Histon Road Rec as a result of the redevelopment. There are 3 trees within the ATS Merkett site which are close to the boundary of the rec, and a tree works application has been made to retain these trees, but it is also undertaken to work to the trees to ensure that the safety of residents using the park.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question or clarification needed?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to the Deputy Councillor for her response. I think the situation around the ATS Merkett's Corner as it borders onto the Histon Road Rec has been quite distressing for residents in many ways, as suddenly one day there was fencing all up, actually restricting the access to the park, which lots of the children go to play on, which appeared without any warning to either residents or indeed to councillors. So I think a big issue has been around the communication. I think that's got much better in terms of communication towards councillors now. We are being regularly updated. But can I ask what the next steps will be around communicating any further steps, particularly around the retention of the trees or not, to the local area and residents as well?
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Yes, it has been a worry, and I'm glad that now that all councillors have been informed of everything that's going on. As you know, one of those trees is a bit dangerous, and we are very concerned about that, and we're trying to save it if we possibly can. But of course, it is a problem, we might not be able to. But rest assured, if that has to come down, then we will replant, and I'll be asking for not small trees, but a bigger tree to be put back in place. If you've got any more concerns, please contact me.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Bennett.
Question 3, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be responding on behalf of my colleagues because there's 3 of us who are involved in this, Councillor Bennett. The first thing to say is we don't have to formally respond to what was Lee Rowley's original implication for the best value notice. It's Simon Hoare, who's now the Minister, as was indicated earlier, he's changed. But what we do is the ability to continually respond and interact with our colleagues in South Cambs. So with regards to the final bit of your question, we do have that opportunity to ensure that the impact on our residents is fully fed back. And all 3 of us have that interaction. I with Bridget, Katie with Tuning, and Rosie with her equivalent as well. So I'd want to highlight 2 things, if I can, in response to your question, Councillor Bennett. First of all, around planning. In the first letter we've sent to Mr. Hoare, it's the council continues to open Monday and Friday, so responding to residents, because residents are at the heart of what we think this has to be about. And in terms of addressing a goal around solving recruitment and retention, good progress has been made. And why this relates to residents is because, as reported previously, they are recruiting 9 of the 23 hard-to-fill posts within the planning department, and that's actually saved both councils £500,000 in total, so £250,000 to us, £250,000 to South Cambs. So that then has benefits back to the residents that we serve, and in addition to which, they've opened more hours now than has previously been the case. So it's continued to be Monday to Friday, and it's open further on more hours on an early evening service. With regards to bins and waste collection, early times, Councillor Bennett, but the first missed collection remains within the normal targets, 99.7%. So again, the service to residents has not declined. And in the second month, it's 99.8%, which would appear to us to mean that residents continue to get a very good service as a result of the 4-day week. Thank you, Madam.
Councillor Bennett, do you have a supplementary question or clarification needed?
A very brief one, Chair, if I may. I just want to say that I understand there is some public anxiety over this, but it's something that I'm very used to seeing in my profession, which is not one known for sweetness and light. You know, if accountants are adopting 4-day weeks in the quantities they are, it's clearly good for their business. And something that other organisations like our own should look at. I'd also like to mention that as a ward councillor, normally any change in bins produces huge numbers of complaints, but I've been pleasantly surprised that the number of bin issues raised by residents has actually dropped since the start of the 4-day week trial, and I think shows how smoothly it's working. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, very much, and thank you, Councillor Bennett. That's reassuring to hear that the residents of Abbey continue to get a good service. I think you mentioned about public anxiety. My fear is that public anxiety has been whipped up by certain elements of the press and by certain elements within the Conservative Party, because Lee Rowley, who instigated this, I'm afraid, was very much the one who started this process. From our perspective, from the Labour Group's perspective, that's why we always start with what's best for residents in this city. And it would appear to us that what's best for residents is about the 4-day week being trialled, continuing, and to make sure that the services continue to be of the high standards that we've come to expect. The secondary impact is that it appears to be very popular with staff, and it's clearly had a significant impact on recruitment and retention. So all round, so far, a year and a half in, this appears to be a very good initiative that the Labour Group continues to support. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. So, Councillor Fatala.
Question number 4, please.
Councillor Thornborough.
This issue about water, the pollution of our water due to forever chemicals, has been reported in the national press recently. The substances involved are fluorinated organic chemicals called PFOA and PFOS and are indeed a problem. To be precise, the water supply in Cambridge City is provided by Cambridge Water, which is in fact owned by South Staffordshire plc, who also owns South Staff's Water, not Anglian Water. Anglia Water handles the wastewater in this area. However, Cambridge Water also has experienced the issue. In 2022, there was a serious incident with PFAS in the water supply near Duxford, and Cambridge Water were heavily criticised. In terms of getting information and improving water monitoring and safety, there is a very useful guidance letter from the Drinking Water Inspectorate about PFAS and PFSA. That water companies are obliged to undertake a risk assessment. The letter also says dialogue between water companies and local authorities regarding PFAS risk assessments is encouraged. Risk assessments and data held by the water companies pertaining to catchments in which there are private water supplies should be made available to local authorities where applicable. I'm answering this now as it comes up, but it comes under environmental health, which comes under the remit of Executive Council for Climate Action and Environment, Councillor Rosie Moore. If this issue should affect development in this region, then I would be directly involved. But after discussions with Councillor Moore and her team, I can confirm that the City Council will ask South Staffordshire, which owns Cambridge Water, to meet with the relevant City Council people and supply a report with A, their risk assessment on PFAS in drinking water supplied within Cambridge City, B, update on progress in mitigating the risk of contamination.
Councillor Thornborough. Councillor Fatala, do you have a supplementary question or require clarification?
Yeah. May I request the Executive Councillor to complete her response to my first question? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the second part would be to request an update on progress in mitigating the risk of contamination of the aquifer as required under the Water Directive, the DWI, in their 7th of March 2023 notice. And then C, for the PFAS levels in the raw water of the various boreholes, as well as what they supply at tap water. As Cambridge Water need to keep this risk assessment updated, we will ask for a regular schedule of updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thornborough.
Thank you.
Councillor Martinelli.
Question 5, please.
So that is the Executive Council for Community and Wealth Building, Councillor Gilderdale.
Thank you for the question. So the Council introduced the traffic control barrier with our partners on the County Council and the GCP onto King's Parade in January 2020. The decision to put something in place came following advice from the police in order to better manage the traffic access onto King's Parade and improve safety in the city centre. The chosen solution at the time was informed by the assessed risk and continuing need for essential access, and therefore the type of barrier equipment also that was available and affordable for us at the time, as well as the availability of funding. While I wasn't a councillor at the time this was brought in, I know there were concerns raised by residents about the form of the equipment, including its appearance, and therefore the council agreed to review the opportunities in 2 different ways. So either to remove it altogether if the assessed risk level would fall sufficiently, following advice from the police, or if not, seek to replace it with something more suited to the long term. So on these two issues, following up on them, recent conversations with the police have shown that they remain of the view that a highly secure arrangement should continue for the foreseeable future. They've cited the current UK national and local threat levels remain at substantial, and therefore request we do not remove this preventative measure at the moment. And second, due to there being such a high cost of replacing it with something more suited to the long term, the council has been working with partners and has really clearly stated that any long-term replacement would need to be jointly funded, as it will cost substantially more. Separate to this, we believe that the GCP's work on the road network hierarchy and making connections may have provided changes to the routes into the city centre, and may included controls on access further out of the city, and this may have reduced the need for such a stringent barrier or controls in this present location. However, obviously, recent deferral of this work means that officers are now seeking an update from the county and GCP as to whether such plans might still be in progress. So on this basis, I think the scope for change in the short term is likely to be limited.
Councillor Gildsdale, you've had over 2 minutes now. Councillor Martinelli, do you have a supplementary or seek
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's actually a very helpful update. I think that's, I think particularly given the context of the original installation of the barrier, I remember very clearly in this chamber and at committees and otherwise being informed by Councillor Herbert, at that time leader of the council, that this, the current situation, particularly the exact installation, was only planned to be a temporary insertion. It would be reviewed for aesthetic changes in the short to medium term. So it is very enlightening to hear that no longer seems to be on the table, and I think that will help inform our discussions with residents. We have always felt that there must be a better solution that maintains the street scene in King's Parade, which is such an important part of the city. So I think, you know, and this has now been going on for 4 years. So I think, you know, our question would be, is there anything that can be done to secure better funding? And in particular, the Executive Councillor, I'd be interested to hear her thoughts on the form of the barrier, given that a couple of years ago, responding to the CAM cycle survey, she did tell them that she'd like to improve it by opening up space on both sides to allow a steady flow of cyclists. So have you changed your mind on that?
Thank you. I think we can all agree that for cyclists and pedestrians, it's not the most ideal situation. However, with the need for access, but also for it to be open and closed, and clearly it was put in, the cost of putting something like a rising bollard would be about 10 times the cost of what is currently in there. I know that especially Councillor Thornborough has been working with the team on improving the aesthetic of it, and I've spoken recently to the officers about whether we can improve the look of the bigger black bollards. But as I was saying, it's very important that we work with other authorities to see if there is funding that we can bring forward. There is slight positive news on rising bollards in the other area of the city, which is by St John's, and I think that will provide enlightening evidence and show that, you know, it's possible to bring new infrastructure in there. And the rising bollards are going to be replaced outside St John's with essentially like-for-like bollards as there were previously. So hopefully that will add to the context of the protection of the city centre. But I'm very happy to follow up as this situation continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn-Horgan.
Question 6, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm glad to say the pavilion is expected to open over the next couple of weeks, as the ground workers are currently completing the last of the decking work and the connecting paths to make the site wheelchair accessible, and also linking the new public toilets and veranda to the existing paths around the recreation ground. Unfortunately, the contractors have been slow in delivering the veranda construction, but it's now on the final stages of completion. We also await the final delivery of orders to fit out the pavilion, with new fold-away tables being delivered on the 6th of December. A new web page is also going live on the council's website over the next couple of weeks and will be used to book the pavilion and the community room. Today, there was a public consultation event for the new housing development that the CIP partnership will be delivering on Warts Causeway at the Pavilion. There was a brief actually arranged to local ward councillors at 1 o'clock, and the pavilion was actually opened as a test to the public and will stay open till 8 o'clock tonight. Probably closed now, I do imagine, yes. So I'm pleased to say that the pavilion will be up and running certainly by Christmas. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question or seek further clarification?
Yes, I want to say thank you very much for the clarification of when the pavilion will be open. And can you confirm that when it opens, both it and the community garden will have CCTV to keep them safe? Thank you.
Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can certainly take that issue away and come back to you with an answer. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson, next question.
Question 8, please.
Councillor Bird. Oh, I'm so sorry. Councillor Porra. Apologies. I'll come back to Councillor Robertson then.
Yeah, unfortunately, Councillor Flaubert's had to go home and she's unwell, so could I ask her question 7, please?
Councillor Carling.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much for the question, Councillor Flaubert. Our previous outdoor play investment strategy ran from 2016 to 2021. And as that period came to a close, we of course had the pandemic that significantly impacted on play, where all sites had to be closed for a period. We also had a census in 2021, and the data from that, which is really important in developing our strategy, took some time to become available. That data is key in making sure our strategy is well informed and targets investment appropriately. Officers have been working to bring the new strategy forward for scrutiny at committee in spring, and I am pleased to confirm that this is still on track. The commitments in the motion we passed at last month's full council meeting have also all been incorporated into that work. In order to achieve an independent piece of work, the council has been through a procurement process and engaged an external company to prepare the outdoor play area investment strategy. The strategy will incorporate the council's entire portfolio of 110 play areas, which, due to the significant growth of the city, means the new strategy is considerably larger than the previous one was. Each play site will be individually scrutinised for play value, location and future investment requirement. All of the play areas will be split into 4 types based on the size, the items of play on each site, the age range they're aimed at and the distance from residential units. Sites will be split into wards and demographics. Locations and play area type can be spread across a number of wards to determine where it's over provision or under provision. And the age splits will be between 0 to 4 years, 4 to 9 years, 9 to 14 years, and over 14 years. And that will determine how each ward is served by play areas and whether a particular type needs to be installed or modified. We're going to bring in an online system where information can be updated live, negating the requirement for future strategic reports and making the data dynamic and a current reliable position. As part of that, there will be an opportunity for all councillors to have a demonstration of the system. There will be the opportunity to view its functionality and content, as well as being able to see firsthand the value of the information and how it can be used to ensure a secure future with strategic direction and planning of outdoor play in Cambridge.
Thank you. Just at 2 minutes. Councillor Porra, do you have something?
Thank you very much. On behalf of Councillor Flaubert, I welcome the commitment to a date in spring, because that was what we wanted to know, is when it's coming forward. And we welcome the inclusion of the things from our motion, which we think were really important about inclusive play. I think it's really urgently needed now. We have wards like, for example, Trumpington, where the population is growing. It's overrepresented in younger people, and at the moment, they don't appear to have enough play equipment. So we would urge the Executive Councillor to move forward on that. And obviously it's great, we've got lots of data, but we need to make sure as soon as we know what's needed that we provide that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson. Oh, sorry, Councillor Carling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, yes. Well, obviously I agree, as we went through in much detail at the last council meeting, about the need to make sure play equipment is inclusive. And as I was saying before, that online system will allow people to look at, in significant detail, at what is available at each site, and that will really improve the transparency of things. So we are taking forward those commitments. You referred to Trumpington just there, Councillor Flaubert's ward, and perhaps it's worth me just outlining that there has been considerable investment in play in Trumpington, through the planning system in particular, both in terms of quantity but also quality, where investments have been made in new equipment using S106 money. So, for example, there are 13 play areas in the Clare Farm area and 6 around Trumpington Meadows, which we're taking care of.
Thank you, Councillor Carling. And now, Councillor Robertson.
Question number 8.
Hey! Councillor Carling again, I think. Open spaces, cities. Oh. Cheers. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, I'll just read through what I said before, and I hope Councillor Robinson will be happy with that. As we promised, we've been conducting an audit of all our properties, and between April and to the end of October, 342 homes were checked, and we identified over 900 actions. These included 39 cases of damp, mould and condensation. We carried out 147 repairs and found 17 unauthorised adaptations. We also identified 12 properties where disabled adaptations were outstanding. 12 were there, was there also drug dealing, and 19 homes were identified domestic abuse that could be reported. We also found hoarding issues, which can be a fire safety issue. The audit has been very successful, and it will help us to maintain our housing stock, support our tenants and provide a better service to everybody.
So, Councillor Robertson, do you have a supplementary or clarification receipt?
I'll just make a further question. I think it's interesting that presumably the original reason for the audits was to identify maintenance problems, and of course they have come to light, things that had not been reported. But all these other issues, is that something we normally would not have known about? And we can pass them on to the various agencies to take their role in dealing with them.
Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Normally we wouldn't know about this. Years ago we used to do audits, many years ago, and then that got stopped. And of course you had the rent man as well, who would report things. But actually going to actually meet the tenants is a great idea, because that's, like you say, we've picked up so many different issues. There's hundreds of issues if I went through the list. I just took a few out. Finance was a big one as well. Having to use the food bank, grass cutting services, the handyman services, occupational services, and it just went on and on. So you can see it's a vital service for our tenants as well as for us. And also we had some subletting as well. We found that. I'm just trying to find the number for you. I was quite surprised actually. Subletting, there were 6 tenants that were subletting. So that's another good thing we found out about. So it is very important, and I want this service to carry on so we can reach every single tenant. And I hope that helps.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Bick.
Question 9, Madam.
And that is for Councillor Carling.
It is indeed. Thank you for raising this, Councillor Bick. This is a project that, as you say, was approved before I was even elected as a councillor, so I absolutely understand the frustrations with slow delivery there. The successful contractor was engaged over a year ago, and they unfortunately kept promising the works would be done on several occasions and have continually let us all down. The work was then meant to begin last week. When it did not, officers contacted 2 alternative contractors, one of which officers have met on site this week to go through the range of works. The funding is still available, and officers have contacted the Friends of Midsummer Common to get further details of their preferred storage unit supplier and the specification for that, as well as for the bench, which can be delivered as part of the project potentially a little bit earlier than the contractor's work starting, so we are getting onto that quickly. I'm confident that the works have all been detailed and that officers are seeking to secure a suitable contractor, and that the Friends have been updated. There was emails that went out earlier today, which I think you may have been copied into. After we finish delivering the scheme, I will ask officers to consider what lessons we can learn from the delays to help us in our future engagement with contractors for schemes like this.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary or clarification?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So thank Councillor Carling for his answer. I just want to draw his attention to the fact that there is a health and safety element to this work. And so it's not just a question of people waiting, it's some risk exists there, which goes beyond just short-term interventions. And the absence of the work, is also holding back the work and the motivation of the volunteers who want to acquire tools that they can't store for the work that is needed to be done. And the council in the meantime has told them, even though they felt able, that they could not undertake any of the work themselves. So it is a quite sorry state, and I'm pleased that he recognised that. But I would wonder if he could also take on board that if the council can't do better than this, and that there will be some learnings, I'm sure, from it, if they can't do better than this, then the vision of some kind of new partnership between the council and residents to maintain community and environment, it's not going to happen, because volunteers will not feel so enthusiastic if the council isn't doing what it said it would do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. I mean, first of all, I can just refer you back to the reply I gave saying that the work will be started very soon, and we are doing what we can to bring forward the parts that don't need a contractor even faster. What I would say in response to your last remark there is that this is one example out of a very large number of collaborative projects that we are delivering with residents. A great deal of our EIP schemes, for example, are done in a way that is directly collaborative with residents. And I think although this one example has taken a while, it doesn't really reflect the broader trends.
Thank you, Councillor Bick and Carling. Right, that's the end of the 30 minutes for oral questions. So I would like to turn to agenda item 7, which is the motion to council. On the motion for debate, the mover and seconder have up to 10 minutes between them. The relevant executive councillor and the mover of the motion have 3 minutes right of reply in that order. So I call on Councillor Anna Smith to move motion 7A. I am advised that Councillor Holloway is your seconder and you have 10 minutes between you.
Thank you. Just before you start timing, could I just thank you for allowing this motion to be brought today and acknowledging that you did that so that we could find a way of having a cross-party support for this. So I just want to thank you for that. I will now press my button to start timing because it is a real honour to be able to move this important motion, although I really genuinely wish it wasn't necessary to do it at all. And if we support this motion tonight, we are supporting a motion that with one addition is word for word the motion that has been passed by councils up and down the country as a result of the cross-party work that the local government association has been doing for the last couple of years. Now, I want to be really clear right at the start. This motion emphatically does not mean that we want to stifle debate. Quite the opposite. If we are not prepared for disagreement or for challenge, then quite frankly, we should go and do something else. Because councils up and down the country represent our residents and exercise community leadership, and we shouldn't just be allowing people to hold us to account. We should be encouraging it by every means we can. And nor is this motion suggesting that councillors are perfect people. This is not about heroes and villains. We are rightly held to high standards. And when we fall short, we should be called out. And that's one of the reasons why we have added a line to this motion that will commit us personally as councillors to the civility pledge issued by the Joe Cox Foundation. What it is about is ensuring that this debate never slides into abuse or intimidation. It's about debate, not hate. And unfortunately, that abuse and intimidation is the experience for too many councillors. And the Local Government Association, LGA's research on this is stark. 7 in 10 councillors reported abuse and intimidation in an LGA survey last year. Now, if we in this chamber reflect that in any way, that means about 28 of us in this room today have experienced intimidation and abuse as councillors. Now, 98% of the councillors and candidates who experienced abuse say they have experienced this on multiple occasions. 64% of respondents have been abused or intimidated in person. This is not simply an online issue. Although online abuse is certainly a major issue, it is not just that. 68% of those councillors or candidates saying they weren't going to stand again say that it is abuse and intimidation that stops them standing again. 68% of those not standing again. And all the evidence shows that if you are a woman or a person of colour, or LGBTQ+, or a person with a disability, if you are any of the groups that are underrepresented in councils across the country, you are more likely to be abused. Yet one more reason why the composition of our councils does not properly represent the communities that we serve. Being sent graphic pictures, being yelled at in the street in front of your families, being chased down the street and threatened, being spat at, being told, "We know where you live," being called corrupt, having an angry person turn up on your doorstep in the middle of the night, reading claims that you should be shot. All of these have happened to councillors around the country and are recorded in the LGA survey. Some of them actually have happened to me personally and probably to others in this room. And what makes this even more shocking in the LGA survey is that this abuse becomes normalised. So many councillors across the country are left with the feeling that this is all part of the job and we just need to put up with it. And that is not good enough. And neither is the hierarchical approach to this that councillors often face. Nationally, the focus on our security can seem often less of a priority. So to give an example, after the terrible murder of David Amess, the government rightly reviewed security arrangements for MPs, both at Westminster and in their communities. Absolutely rightly so. But the government ignored repeated calls from the LGA to widen the scope of that review to local politicians. And that's not to say that here in Cambridge we receive no support. I have personally found a lot of local support when I have either experienced abuse or when I've called it out. But again, that's really not the point, because abuse of anyone by anyone is unacceptable. And that's why we're moving this motion today. To raise awareness, to call for better support, and you will see actions that we have suggested in that motion. To commit ourselves to the highest possible standards, and to say that enough is enough. We will not normalise abuse in this chamber. We will stand in solidarity with anyone here or with any other councillor of whatever party who faces abuse. And where it's safe to do so, we will call that abuse out. I move this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm advised, Councillor Holloway, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right? And you have 4 minutes, 10 seconds.
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any debate? So I have Councillor Tong, Councillor Bird, Bajent, Thornborough and Nestor. Hussain. I may not have got you in exactly the right order, so I apologise because I'm looking. Payne and Hope. Okay, so we've got a lot of speakers, which is good. Councillor Tong. And you have 3 minutes.
Hang on, let me just test that. I can be heard okay, right? Yeah. So I am going to take this quite slowly because I am a little bit worried about maybe saying something that's identifying, and I'm trying not to identify anyone I'm going to speak about now. But broadly, I want to say I really agree with the aims of this motion. I especially agree with Councillor Smith's point about women receiving a lot of abuse, okay? There's a lot of misogyny, especially in local politics. And I guess I wanted to quickly move into discussing the fact that someone very high profile as an activist associated with a political party in Cambridge has been saying some really foul misogynistic stuff about another political party's councillor here quite recently. And I think this is really concerning, especially because I know the political party in question actually knows that the individual's doing this because someone I know that is associated has told me that they were actually warned about this person when they got involved. So I really appreciate what the motion is, putting forward, and I'm going to support it. But I also think, stuff needs to be acted on. I don't want this to just be all words and come across as just, posturing about trying to improve the state of local politics. A lot of the time, these people who are doing this sort of stuff can be very troubled, and that needs to be taken into account. However, I think people should be, these sort of people should be reached out to and helped. If you want any details, so originally I was going to read a bunch of the comments made, but then I thought, some of them are genuinely quite awful, and I didn't want to, distress anyone, I guess. So if any, leaders of any of the political groups on Cambridge City Council would like to discuss with me, I'll be happy to send you a huge amount of stuff that goes over years. Yeah, basically that's the point.
Thank you, Councillor Tong. Councillor, I can't read my own writing here. Bick. I think it's Councillor Bick. No, it's Councillor Bajent. I might have left. Councillor Bird. It is. I cannot read my own writing. I apologise. I'm going to have to do better next time. I'm getting a bit sloppy here. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just wanted to let you know that I filled in that survey because it was very important. And thank you, Councillor Smith, for bringing in this motion. I've been through it. I had 100 texts a day. I had blokes threatening to come round my house with a gang of them. And it was distressing. I was on my own at the time, and it was very frightening because I was, when you've been on your own and everything, over just one issue that was being discussed in this city. And it was disgusting. I did ring the police. I gave the person's name. I gave him the person's address. And the police did nothing. I had to phone the police again about it because I wanted something done. And nothing again was done. The police just don't seem to care. But if they lived in our shoes when we're going through it, it's not nice. And when you've got councillors as well joining in, that's not nice. I wouldn't want it to happen to anybody. But so please, support this motion. It's very important we get it out there and get the police involved and make sure they do something, because it shouldn't just be us. Every person should be pulled out. Social media has ruined politics. It really has. And it's the worst thing ever come in. But that's all I'll say. But thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. So, Councillor Bajent.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to see this resolution because for some time it's been an issue and it's been increasingly becoming a greater issue in politics. I want to relate 3 examples of how I felt threatened. During the short campaign, I cycled past some STZ protesters. They were on Mill Road on a stall. One of their number marched into the road waving a banner like that straight at me. Now, I stopped on my trike. And then, of course, the 20 or so protesters all lammed into me verbally. On another occasion, actually on election day, a worker from the carpet shop on Mill Road came and sat next to me. I was sitting on a bench outside the co-op, and he came and sat next to me so that he was actually touching me. He was a large guy, a really large guy. He held a poster and he held it up against my head like that. The Tory party candidate stood there and watched. Nothing. I didn't respond. He just kept murmuring things to me. Could be said to be threatening, but that's what he did on election day. As someone who uses social media all the time, constantly, I disagree with Jerry about its use. I think it's a fantastic media for getting messages out there. So sometimes I'll make a tweet and I'll get 2,000 or 4,000 responses. But amongst those responses are a group of people that are constantly harassing me, being rude about me, swearing at me, calling me a liar, calling me corrupt. So it's a good method of getting words out there, but you do put yourself in the line of fire. I know that most councillors don't use social media because they've been driven off of it by this abusive actions of other people. Now, I reported all these things to the police in similar vein to the way that Jerry did. They were made aware of everything that happened to me during the campaign. The police had appointed, I think, a detective inspector to look into all the issues during the short campaign. Nothing happened. So it was as good as not there. It was a waste of time. So I don't want this resolution to be a waste of time. I'd like this resolution to be something that people follow up on. Thank you.
Councillor Thornborough.
早晨，熄咗飯未？我有到英國人，我足足知幾好認識。查生要英國識問題，我係嚟度住地40多年，但係你覺得我自家係解任嘅英國人？你聽教我這樣話。而乃係太賴好似咁 not very Asian. How British am I? I feel very British. Born in a British colony, I have lived here for 40 years. But how British do you think I am now you hear me talking like this? Instead of looking like this. 唔係好我教早茶。
Thank you, Councillor Thornborough. Councillor Nestor.
¿Qué tal inglesa soy? Me siento inglesa, he vivido aquí por más de 10 años, pero ¿qué tan inglesa piensas que soy ahora que me ves así, en vez de verme así? Not very Latin. I've been in this country for over 10 years and in Cambridge for the same amount of time. When you look at me, do you look at me as part of our community or as part of something different? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nestor. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Madam. So we, all the councillors, all the MPs, all the public representatives, everyone working for people. We are not anyone working for our own interest or own goal. We sacrifice our time, money, and health. We want to help the community. So we should not be abused by any circumstance, anywhere, even the council house, or the road, or other places. As I can mention two honorable MP, one is Jo Cox. She was killed 2016. She was doing her own job. She is fighting for her own democracy and own opinion. Same as David Adams, she was killed in Leon 2021. So this type of scenario should not be in UK tolerate anymore. And we should not be abused in the doorstep or in a council house or other place because of our ethnicity or voice or accent or English is not good enough. English is only one language, is more popular, but some people in the world, they are doing. So we should not be ill-treated for our color, race, or language. Thank you.
For Hussain. And Councillor Payne, wish to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just from our side of the chamber, I'd like to thank Councillor Smith for bringing this motion forward. It's clear, and I'm obviously very glad to see it would receive resounding support. I don't think any council would ask to receive more hate, and it's very clear that we've all received far more of it than anyone should have to. I think it's also a very timely motion as we come into the season of running towards the local elections in the next 6 months, and at some point over that time, well, not so long afterwards, the general election as well, where we will see the debate grow, and it's right and proper. There will be discussion, there will be heated debate in this chamber and in the general election hustings as well about our policies and our views. But that has to always be respectful, and I think we should all treat one another with the treatment we would wish to receive in return of them. I think the abuse and negativity councillors receive has only got worse over the last couple of years. I think there's a rising sense of apathy and general dissatisfaction brought about by a whole number of things, from the economic situation. Our electoral system creates a sense of apathy and resentment, where unfortunately most people have never had the opportunity to vote for the party they actually want to represent them because they felt they had to vote tactically. So I very much hope that if we do see a change in government in future, one of the things they commit to is proportional representation, so people feel they do have a direct way to influence what their politicians are saying on their behalf. I also think the example being set by the top, by the Conservative government at the moment, does not set a good example of what politics should look like, and actually what the kind of politics in Cambridge looks like most of the time. I think we do a much better job. It's interesting, I think, when we go around on the doorsteps talking to residents, that many people don't realise that local councillors, actually, it's not our full-time job. For most of us, it's something we juggle around our work, our family life, or other commitments to fit into those tiny spaces that we have because we care, because we want to do the right thing for our residents. Whereas many people, I think, can see us as faceless sort of people who sit behind a large office team around us. We're not that. We're people out doing the best that we can. And I think one thing I would say is that for everyone in this chamber, we have so much respect for our colleagues from all parties for the very hard work they do across Cambridge. So I think it's important and it's right that as we come into the run-up to the local and the national elections, that we set the tone with this motion, which I think it does very well, that we highlight the need for respect and tolerance in all aspects of our dealings. I would also add to that I think that applies to us here in this chamber, in the quality of debate we have at some of the tense moments, but also to the teams of volunteers that we lead as well. And as leaders in our parties, actually it is our responsibility, it's incumbent on us to make sure that as our activists go out across the city, that they're treating one another and the parties they meet with the respect that they deserve as well. So thank you, Councillor Smith. I look forward to seeing this motion fully supported.
Councillor Howe. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I mean, I would just like to emphasise that we should all take an active bystander approach in this context. So we shouldn't just wait until we are the victims. So we should call out abuse and hate wherever we see it. And unfortunately, too many people look the other way when they see abuse happening to other people until they see other people stepping in, and then they are happy to help. They just don't want to be the first ones, to get to confront other people. And I think that's where we as councillors really can take the lead or lead by example. So we should confront hate and abuse by whoever and to whoever it happens. I think it's really a very simple rule. I mean, debate with others like you want them to debate with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. And Councillor Porrer.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think Councillor Smith and Councillor Payne and lots of other people have covered a lot of what I was going to say. I suppose, for me, nobody should feel that by trying to participate in local democracy, you might put your family at risk. And picking up on what Councillor Bird said as well, it can be scary. And I'm really sorry to hear about that, Councillor Bird, because that must have been a horrific experience, and Councillor Page and others who've talked about it. We can't normalise this, I think Councillor Smith said. The attitude, all politicians, you're all the same. I'm shocked on the doorstep, some people go, you're all the same, normally referring to national government. I do normally say, actually, putting politics aside, there's no one in this chamber that I think is doing this for the wrong reasons. I think we're all trying to do the same thing. It's not necessarily a vote-winning pitch on the doorstep, but I think it's true. And I think it's important to say that, because actually otherwise everyone gets dragged down. And we shouldn't be putting people off. We need a new pipeline of representative councillors coming through, and this is exactly who are being put off by the toxicity of the debate. So I fully support this motion, as I hope we all do, because it is so important that people trying to do the best for their community, whether they're volunteers or councillors or officers, are respected and hopefully given credit. Criticise my views, that's absolutely fine, I'll criticise yours back. But personally, you know, it's not about the person, it's about the debate. So thank you for bringing this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lee.
Obviously I support the motion. I just wanted to highlight the role that Brexit, the far-right Tory client media and the Tory party have taken in creating the conditions where society is so incredibly polarised that it's impossible to have a civil discussion about these kinds of issues that we have. And I think if it weren't for a lot of bad faith actors in the Tory party, we would have a very different political climate right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. There's been some good comments already. I just want to add a couple of things. We have the new imprint rules coming in for the next election, which for smaller parties like my own means that we are having to publish home addresses. Some of you may already know that the official address of Cambridge Green Party is actually my home address, because we don't actually have any money for an office. So I've had a conversation with some of the county independents who have told me that they feel uncomfortable standing for election, that they feel a target is being painted on their back and on their family's back. And I do feel that we need to possibly, as a cross-party working group, consider how we can improve safety. For example, I think that we should probably refrain from putting councillors' home addresses on the council website from now on. I also want to share that in my day job, I have actually had training on dealing with abusive customers. And I've actually found this really very helpful in my political life. And I'd like to explore as councillors getting some training on how to diffuse tensions and manage criticism from the public. You know, it might save a life, or it might just persuade somebody not to be a dick on Twitter. Sorry, I'm really sorry, my potty mouth. Apologies, Chair. And I just want to end with something that means a lot to me. I know it's very easy to sink to the same level when somebody is abusive to you. I just want to quote Michelle Obama, who said, "When someone is cruel rats like a bully, you don't have to stoop to their level. No, our motto is when they go low, we go high." Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I was a bit over enthusiastic with the bell, so you were well within your limit. But thank you. Okay, so, I see Councillor Todd Jones, Councillor Moore. Councillor Todd Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a very quick practical point. I think we as a Labour Party don't publish our addresses on our nomination papers for the elections, and I just wonder if that's something that we as a council should perhaps ask all councillors to do, and that might help safeguard councillors in terms of future elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'll be very quick just to say it's quite shocking what Councillor Bennett said. I think that councillors should be free to stand without their home address. I chose to take mine off due to some of the responses I was getting in line with what we've talked about here. So I would totally support you to campaign for that to be available for all councillors. Also, depending on people's jobs, it might not be suitable to have their address online. So it makes sense if we want to represent the whole of society that everybody is able to be a councillor in that regard. On that, though, we do have a brand new councillor here who maybe is hearing this and it could be a bit off-putting. So I just wanted to highlight that the very, very vast majority of interactions that I have had as a councillor and as an executive councillor who has had some quite controversial issues in my portfolio, particularly around the market, that the vast majority of interactions are very positive, and it's just that as these things are in life, one horrible interaction always seems much bigger and worse than the good ones. So the vast majority is good, but we need to stamp out the bad. Thank you.
Okay, so if we don't have any more debate, I will turn to Councillor Holloway, and you've got 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank everyone for their comments, and particularly those who did share their own experiences. That was extremely powerful. I'll also just echo Councillor Porra's point about council officers as well, who I know work incredibly hard and do receive a lot of abuse at times as well, which is totally unwarranted, just as it is for councillors and candidates. And I think it's all been said really, so I'm not going to take any more time. I'll just say let's all try to remember, whether it's social media, whether it's email, whether it's in person, let's all just remember we're human beings.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. I will now go to the vote. Those in favour, against, any... I'm so sorry. Councillor Davey, I looked at that and wondered what it was on my notes. So, Councillor Davey, and you have... and also, Councillor... You had 3 minutes. You get a right to reply too. I'm trying to rush
Anna
everybody.
first.
So apologies for that. So Councillor Davey and then Councillor Smith, you have the right. Councillor Smith, Anna.
There we are. Switched on now. Yeah, I think Councillor Davey gets the comment after the vote, but I might be wrong about that. Thank you. I'm profoundly moved by some of the things that I've heard around the chamber, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone when I thank people for the honesty that has been shown in this and the vulnerability that's been shown in this debate, and I think that says a lot about us as a group of councillors. I think the two issues that come out most for me are this issue around home addresses, and Councillor Bennett, I think I saw some of the same comments from some of the county independents, and it's very concerning that impact of the imprint rules and what that might do to people thinking about standing. And I also think what Councillor Bird has said is absolutely crucial around the response of the police. It was also something that Councillor Bajent mentioned. One of the findings actually of the LGA report is that the government failure to set national guidelines for police actions for abuse of councillors has led to very inconsistent responses even within authorities, and one of the findings of the report is that the police forces need to therefore work together to improve the consistency of responses to threats against councillors, and I think that's really very, very important that we take that away. But I do want to thank people for their really moving and powerful testimonies this evening, and thank you in anticipation for your vote.
So, Councillor Davey, you have the right of reply for 3 minutes before or after the vote.
Guided by Tom.
You have the choice.
So, I'll do it now then. I'll be very brief. As to be something we normally say. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much to Councillor Smith for bringing this. Her determination to bring it over, I think it's the third council that she's attempted to bring this motion, and it's incredibly welcome. The key bit for me in much of this debate has been, it has been raised about misogyny. I think it's really important, as Anna has said in the stats, it's clear that women suffer completely disproportionately to men. I'm not excusing abuse towards men, but when you look at the discussions around the STZ and the abuse that both Heather Williams, a Conservative councillor in South Cambridgeshire, got, and the abuse that Elisa Masciani got as the Labour councillor, that shows that the politics is irrelevant. It's about abuse, and in that particular case, abuse particularly aimed at women. And I think that's really important that we stress that, and that's made clear. The final thing to say is that, like Anna, I was incredibly moved by what was being said this evening and the powerful testimonies of individuals. But it also must be about what Councillor Tong, right at the start of the debate, talked about, i.e. enforcement. It's no good just having nice words. And so I'm particularly interested about the third bullet point of the motion, which is regularly review the support available for councillors in relation to abuse and intimidation of councillors. I'll take as an action, Jane and I will go away and come back with proposals to civic affairs as to how we'll tackle this. And in response to your question, Councillor Tong, please come and talk to me. Because otherwise, if people don't report it and sit on this, it will not be tackled. And that would be against the spirit of the motion that Councillor Smith support. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. So now we will go to the vote, and the electronic voting will be open, and it's open. So those in favour, against, and any abstentions, please. So I think it's taking a little time to catch up. Councillor Robertson, it's yours. Okay, so that's everybody. So the vote is unanimous with 37 in favour. So the motion is carried. So we now turn to agenda item 8, written questions, and to note that these are in the information pack, pages 19 to 25 onwards. So those are in the information pack, and thank you. That actually concludes the full council meeting. I am going to add one thing. Councillor Bird, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I know it's very unusual for us to speak up after this, but I just wanted to let everybody know about the conference, the domestic violence conference on Monday. It starts at 10. You can be there from 9:30 till 2:30 at the Meadows Community Centre. And I know yourself, Madam Mayor, are coming to the event too.
I think it's very apposite given the motion that we have just passed, and I was about to mention that actually in my handwritten notes. So thank you very much, Councillor Bird, for that. So we now, please, if we haven't already ended the live stream, our meeting producer, or you'll be ending that. Please could members take their own rubbish home or dispose of it in the bins provided and return any used glasses to the red trays outside the committee rooms. I think we're going to start issuing note to people on their desks, seats about this. Good night, and I will see you at the next meeting on Thursday, the 15th of February, 2024. It says here 6:30 p.m. I'll check that. Please note the budget meeting will consist of only one meeting. The council meeting pencilled in on the 29th of February 2023 has been cancelled. So thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, and have a good rest of the evening.